Invocation or moment of silence, Joshua Hamry.
This nation is a melting pot, a collaboration of all involved, where everyone should have the opportunity to achieve their potential, where everyone should be able to live their life unobstructed by another, where everyone has their own song, their own personal gathering of melody, rhythm, and harmony that drives them to their objectives and aspirations. May this board do all that we can to help our students find their way to their song, their musical expression, their internal driving cadence. May the maestros and conductors in their lives and in our schools share their talent and support of these children as they themselves continue to hone their craft, knowing that they themselves continue to learn as they teach. And pledge allegiance.
To the United
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Fire evacuation announcements. There's double doors at the back of the building. Head out the double doors, down to the parking lot. If you're heading out these double doors, take a right, my left, go down the stairs and out to the parking lot. Roll call, Kathy.
Mr. Hamray?
Here.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Here.
Mrs. Pickett?
Here.
Mr. Ryder?
Here.
Mr. Ungary?
Here.
Mrs. Acree?
Here.
Dr. Callanan?
Here.
Mrs. Cushman?
Here.
Madam Chair?
Here. Before I announce the board guests, if anybody would like to speak tonight, please make sure you sign up before it gets to the public comment section of the agenda. And the sign-up sheet is right up there on the podium. Thank you. Board guests?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tonight we welcome Louis Fiore and Thomas Kinsler, our Enfield Registrar of Voters. They're here to discuss the voting locations and the standards for fundraising. There's information in your packet that details the information they're about to speak on, but we welcome our Registrar of Voters.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Hello, everybody. Good to see everybody. I'm Lou Fiore, Democratic Registrar of Voters.
Tom Kinsler.
We're here tonight. Basically, we wanted to give you an update as far as we perceive the moving back to the JFK as a voting location in the upcoming August election. Just some background for some of the new members. About 2 years ago, we had to leave JFK because, as you know, the construction and rehabilitation of JFK School, and we could not hold the elections there. So we temporarily moved out of district to the Senior Center with special permission from the Secretary of State because that was not a district location. But now that JFK is, coming back up online, and we've received word from the Building Committee chairman that we would be able to get back into the gym area for the upcoming August and November elections. It's Tom's and our intent to proceed to do that. We wanted to inform you of that and make sure that was okay with you guys, and make sure that there wasn't any issues that you saw for us to start that initiation process, which is a little cumbersome for us because we do have to notify again all 5,000 plus voters in that district that they're going to be going back to vote in JFK come August and September.
Yeah, we have to do that 90 days before any election. So our struggle was to make sure that there was going to be no foreseen issues that would cause us not to be able to go there after a certain date. So we've been fairly well reassured that that isn't going to happen. So we're going to go forward.
I mean, JFK does serve the best purpose for that particular district. It really is the only location in that district that can handle 6,000, not that we ever get 100% turnout, but that amount of potential voters, and especially with the new gym layout, which is kind of similar to Enfield High in a way, really is going to be fantastic for the voters to be able to get into that gym location. So we wanted to mention that too, to see if there's any issues that you perceive with us going ahead and starting that process. We just didn't want to go ahead and do that on our own without showing you certainly due respect and everything to let you know that was our intent. So are we getting kind of that's a thumbs up here?
Mr. Ungary?
Well, I'd just like to say that that is the district that I reside in, I live in, and that is the school, JFK, that I've been voting in for years.
Yeah.
And then we've had to move, obviously, due to the construction issues there. And not that it's been a big inconvenience, but I certainly welcome the opportunity to come back to JFK and to use that as our area to vote then. So.
When it's a big turnout at the Senior Center, it was a little challenging to keep the flow going, well and not disrupt anything.
What that doesn't, for just to let you know, not that you really care, what it doesn't allow us now to use is we've been successful at the senior center. So that will become the main backup site now for any other locations that have an issue. So it has been somewhat successful there. So
And they've been very, very,
Very
very
accommodating,
gracious
yeah.
and accommodating through the whole process.
So if I may, Madam Chair, through you, may I address the superintendent? Thank you. Is it okay if we can directly contact the JFK principal to arrange a tour? Because we would like to get a tour, Mr. Superintendent? Is that?
Absolutely, as long as there's some flexibility with still ongoing construction issues, but I'm sure they'll be able to find a time to get, after kids are gone, it'd be probably more appropriate for you guys to get a better handle, so.
Yeah, great.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you very much. One of the things I did want to mention is let you know of potential dates. One of the issues we always have had, and we've had for many years, of course, if we have an election when school's in session. And I do want to say, since I've been registered now for almost 8 years, the superintendent and the staff has been so accommodating whenever we've had an election when school's in session. But I did want to mention to you that there's potential dates so that you just have down that we might have an election when school's in session, which can be quite cumbersome. September 5th, 2023 could be a potential election when school is in session. April 23rd, 2024 is another, that's the presidential primary, and I'm sure we will have one of those. And of course, any special election that occurs due to a vacancy in a state or federal election would also probably be held when school's in session. And of course, we would do all the same protocols we've always had before with the safety officer to be able to utilize those schools for election when school's in session. I just want to make you aware of that. We certainly don't anticipate any changes to that. The other thing we brought tonight, just in case you had any questions, Tom and I did a couple of minor updates to the fundraising process that we have. And one of the things that a couple of years ago, we made some changes, and we did work with staff a little bit on that, was when COVID first started, some of our locations really couldn't handle the youth vote and fundraising simultaneously in the same area, and especially with the COVID restrictions. So Tom and I went through this about 2 or maybe 2 years ago, and we made a couple updates since then, which we wanted to pass on to you. I believe it's in your packet. I'm not going to waste your time and go through everything. I think staff is also familiar with it. But basically what we've come down to in the annex and at JFK, we certainly will be able to handle the youth vote and any fundraising activities inside the area. At Enfield Street School, we can only handle that when we're back into the all-purpose room in the front, because we can't really handle that in the back of the building. And of course, I'm sure, in Henry Barnard, we can only handle the youth vote because of that small hallway into that gym. So really nothing's changed. We will get back to you once we get back into JFK. We'll add that section to the fundraising because we want to make sure that everyone's clear. We do support fundraising, but we have to do it orderly so that there's no interference with the voting process getting in and out of that voting area. So any questions on that? If you don't have them tonight, please feel free to get back to us at any time to discuss that. The last thing I just want to mention, only because it was asked of me to mention it, fully understanding exactly what's going on with COVID and what's going on in all the all-purpose rooms, particularly at Enfield Street School, Henry Barnard, but really the Enfield Street School I just need to mention is that, when the COVID and all the items stored in the all-purpose room at Enfield Street School, we had to go into the back in the gym. And I do have to mention, just for the record, it is ADA compliant, okay, but it is very difficult for us to really hold elections in the back at Enfield Street School. So I'm really hoping, and I'm not sure it's going to happen. We're really hoping we get back into that all-purpose room, at least by November. I know it's lots with COVID.
I don't know if there's a spot where they can move that, conveniently too, but we ran into some issues with the elderly, with the lighting, with the egress, with the stairs and the ramp. It's taxing on some of our residents, and we would like to avoid any potential issues in the future if we could.
Not sure anything could be done, but we did need to mention, and we're not too concerned about August so much, but certainly come November, hoping things can get squared away in that all-purpose room so we can get back to normal in that school. Don't know if that's going to be feasible, but we did need to mention it.
Makes two of us, Mr. Fiore.
Yeah.
So if you could take care of that tonight, it would be great.
Mr. Ryder?
So it looks like if Enfield Street Schools voting returns to the all-purpose room, they can do youth vote plus a fundraiser.
Yes.
So that would just leave Henry Barnard that can only do a youth vote or a fundraiser based on space.
Yes.
And I should mention, they
Yeah.
can do a fundraiser outdoors.
Okay.
We will always, that's always fine.
That's what I wanted to ask about
Yeah,
because
just go past the 75 feet, they can set up a tent, but in November, that's kind of hard, and
Right.
they'd have to be past 75 feet for a fundraiser.
Within the 75 feet.
Oh, within it,
Within
okay.
the 75 feet.
So they could literally be right outside the door.
Absolutely.
With a table and chairs.
Henry Barn is a perfect example of that. Absolutely, we would encourage that, even when the youth vote's not there, to be honest with you, is that the fundraising at location be right outside that glass menage there to get into the gym with a pump tent, and we will, give them all the support we can.
Right, because the youth vote starts in 4th grade, and I'd hate to say, if you live in 3 out of 4 districts, you can vote, and also the PTO can have a fundraiser, but you can't in one building. So.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I totally understand that. So, yeah, we will always accommodate them within the 75-foot in any of the locations.
Barnard was a challenge because the width of that hallway going into the gym,
Yeah.
they would put the youth vote there, and you couldn't have enter and exit and keep people apart.
But my only question is, when you first walk in, you take a tight right turn to go into the gym to vote.
Yeah.
And then as you walk in, before you turn right, the youth vote table would be in the corner.
Yep.
Couldn't they have a fundraiser at the end of that hall, though?
Well, yeah, it doesn't.
Like on the other side of the
Yeah, it
bathrooms?
really doesn't work for us. Don't forget, we're responsible for everything within a 75-foot.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't conducive
Too
at
tight.
Henry Barnard.
It's too tight.
It's
Because you
very
have people
difficult.
coming in, people loitering to
Right.
buy their baked goods, and
And everyone's coming in and out of Henry Barnard the same door.
Right.
There's not a separate exit door.
Okay.
Really an oversight when they did that gym. So it just makes it a lot easier for ingress and regress for the people. We have some people that are in canes, that we're only going to support one item in that hallway. So when there's no youth vote, then certainly the fundraising can occur
Right.
inside that hallway. But when there's a youth vote, then the fundraiser is going to have to go outside in that particular location.
All right. Maybe there's something we can do in the future. I just wanted to ask for that PTO.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
any other questions?
Oh,
Thank you both for coming and,
No, thank
and
you.
letting us know we can go back to JFK to vote.
Yeah.
I think the parking is better, and,
Yeah.
And if you
it's a little
forget,
more-
we'll send you a letter.
Oh,
Of
I
course.
did have one more.
Sure.
Sorry, I did have one. Through you, Madam Chair, to the superintendent. Can we again approach you in August and November? So we can't use a town robocall for the federal regulations, but we know we can use yours. We do that again for notification? Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Awesome.
Much awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Good seeing everybody.
The superintendent's report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to go just a little bit out of order because of recent news in the last 24 hours. Something may take me a little longer. But Enfield Public School students will not attend school on Friday, February 18th and Tuesday, February 22nd in order for staff to attend professional development workshops. And all Enfield Public Schools and offices will be closed on Monday, February 21st in observation of President's Day. And as a reminder for staff, that is a half-day professional development day. Staff is permitted to leave early that day. That's an annual question that I usually send an email out, and I totally forgot. So there you go. You got me on record. A couple of things, Madam Chair, and this is a little bit what I wasn't necessarily hoping to talk about tonight. As I mentioned the last time we met, that I want to get back to actually talking about kids and the good things that we do in our schools, but there's a couple of things that obviously everybody's aware of recent news in the last 24 hours, but something else that I felt compelled to address. And that's regard to an assignment that I know a lot of you have gotten questions about. To be honest, I've gotten a few, not as many as I think you guys have, in regards to a pizza assignment that was sent out inadvertently to an 8th grade class, or 8th grade students, I should say. The people who have reached out to me, the parents who have children in those classes, have reached out to staff, have reached out either to my office, to our curriculum office, or to the staff member themselves who sent it out. They may know this, other people may not. You as board members should know I did send you an update on it. I just need to be very clear about what happened here. And the simple truth was, it was a mistake. And I know that there are some who may not believe that. I know there are some who don't necessarily maybe want that answer. I'm not in the position to try to change narratives on what actually took place. And I say that because normally I would take responsibility, and I still do, when one of our staff members make an inadvertent mistake. In this particular case, I didn't even get a chance to, because the person who made the mistake jumped ahead of it before I was even notified that it had happened. And I say that because that says everything you need to know about the character of this person better than I can say something out loud. So I felt an obligation to bring this up, not to draw attention to this person any more than it's already been drawn onto them, but to set the record straight that this was simply an error. And I don't know about you, the 9 of you, or anyone in the room, or anyone watching at home. If anybody can look in the mirror and say they've never made an honest mistake, you're probably fooling yourself. So one of the things that compelled me to speak up this evening, because I felt I had an obligation, that this is a longtime great staff member. And I know there has been some suggestions. Now, again, I'm not on social media. You all know that. I don't read it. Doesn't stop people from sending it to me. Please don't, but you do anyway. I get it. And there have been some suggestions about how I should handle a mistake that a staff member made. Now, again, if this was a malicious mistake, or if the argument was, well, I really believe I should have sent this out, and let me just say, come out and say it. You know, the inadvertently information that was sent to children was inappropriate. I agree with it. I'm sure all of you agree with it. And you know who else agrees that it was inappropriate? The person who made the mistake. And I don't even need to take my word for that. I have seen the responses to parents that said, and quote, I own this. So there are some that are suggesting ways that I should handle this when it comes to dealing with a staff member. And I would ask you this. Any sort of repercussions for a staff member that, let's say I was interested in doing it, would it be worse than spending the past 2 weeks being ridiculed online, being called things such as a pedophile, or making threats and harm to the physical threats toward this person? There's nothing I can do to somebody that's worse. So I'm speaking up tonight for 2 reasons. One, to just tell people what happened if you didn't know, and also to apologize to that person. And I don't want to draw any more undue attention to this person because, quite frankly, they've been through enough. And I would hope that in some time, if I were ever in that same position, someone would do the same for me, as I know the 9 of you would expect somebody to do for you. I can't control what people want to talk about. I would never try to control what people want to talk about. That's not my job. People have the right to come in here and say whatever they want at that microphone for 3 minutes. I've never argued that. I don't intend on arguing that. But I do control what I talk about. And I have an obligation to stand up for this person who has meant a lot to so many kids in this district for a very long time, for a mistake that they are, quite frankly, embarrassed about and devastated that it happened on their watch. So I owe that to that person. But I also owe to that person that the answer is not going to change. There was no hidden agenda. There was no secret cabal to indoctrinate kids on something. They sent the wrong document. And because of that, that's not going to change. And I'm not going to perpetuate this story any longer on their behalf. So that's what happened. None of us are happy that it happened. No one feels worse that it happened than the person that did it. But I owe it to that person to stand up here and tell them, I got your back on this one. And going forward, I'm not doing it for an applause. But out of respect for that person, my answer is not going to change. The circumstances, the motive is not going to change. I just told you what it is. I'm moving on for them and for the 5,000 kids that we actually have to worry about. That said, feel free to discuss it at your will, but my answer is not going to change. Now to the other thing that has creeped upon us over the last 24 hours. Again, throwing a little bit of a monkey wrench into what I wanted to talk about tonight. By now, you're all aware that the governor had a press conference last night at 4:15. Thanks. Now, traditionally, there have been times when superintendents will be notified if a major announcement was going to come, and the governor was going to make an announcement, especially regarding schools. This wasn't one of those times. So I found out about it probably after most of you did, because I don't get news alerts on my phone, but I do know a lot of people that do. So yesterday afternoon, I started getting news texts saying, "What's he going to say?" I've met him 3 times, guys. I don't know. Like, he seems like a nice guy, but we've met 3 times. I don't know what he was going to say. I found out what he was going to say at the same time all of you did, which was 4:15 in the afternoon yesterday. Excuse me. So that the board is aware, you may have noticed that there was a slight change to your agenda for this evening. That was made late in the day yesterday. And the reason that that change was made is when I received confirmation that, yeah, the governor was going to probably address masks in schools, your agenda for tonight was already set. And in order to make an agenda change, you have to do it 24 hours in advance. So that would be 7 p.m. last night. The problem is Ms. Alecki has to get this in the hands of the town clerk before she leaves for the evening. So we had to about 4 o'clock to actually make the change. So I spoke with the chair and said we should probably add it on the agenda because, quite honestly, none of us know what he's going to say at 4 o'clock. And if we don't add it as an agenda item, you guys can't talk about it tonight. Again, not knowing what he was going to say when he took the microphone yesterday. Again, I did not know what he was going to say when he went to the front of the microphone yesterday. But I usually have a gauge on what's said and what's perceived in the public simply by walking through my front door coming home at night. And usually she's going to kill me for this, but I can usually get a sense as to what the interpretation of whatever new announcement's going to be based on the question I get from my wife when I get home. And the question that I got last night was, so masks are off on the 28th. It's your decision. What are you going to do? And immediately I knew, okay, that's what people heard, rightfully so. And believe me, I am not blaming anyone who interpreted that way, because if I did, that means I'm also blaming her, and I've been married way too long to make that mistake. So therefore, I had an understanding that, okay, people only heard the first thing that came out. And if most people were like my wife, they heard that and they turned it off because they have other things to do. I, unfortunately, and Mr. Longi, don't have that luxury of just turning it off then. We could, but we have to listen to the remainder of it to find out. Usually we find out more information on specifics about what was actually going to happen with this change. And I'll be honest, the governor did clarify later on during the press conference what his intentions were, but he said it at a time when no one was watching. So everybody heard what my wife heard and didn't actually hear the next part. And I know that to be true because I think I'm up to like 78 messages today from parents saying, you have the right to take masks off, take them off. And I don't want to say to parents, no, you didn't hear it right, because I still had a lot of unanswered questions going into this before I felt comfortable telling somebody, no, that's not actually what he meant, because who am I to speak on behalf of what the governor was saying? So that said, what the governor explained after, and I know, and I see a camera over here, so I'll put these guys on the spot for once. You know, the media usually takes a lot of hits on certain stuff, but I got to give the local reporters credit, because if you watch these press conferences, wait for the Q&A portion, because that's usually, I forget about the national stuff that everybody fights over. I'm not worried about that. The local reporters usually will ask the right questions for us to get a better insight as to where we're going on this. And one of the local reporters, I don't remember which one specifically, asked, well, let me understand this, like the mandate and your powers end on the 15th. You're going to extend this to the 28th and then rescind it on the 28th. Like, how is that possible? And it was at that point that the governor did explain a little bit in detail on what he was asking the legislature to do. But again, most people didn't hear that. So listening to this, I had some questions and some confusions about, okay, how is this process going to work? And my I was explaining this to my wife, like, yes and no. Like, yeah, it looks like they're coming off, but not necessarily. It's not my choice yet. But so based on her advice, and I don't want to insult anyone in the room, this one you can be mad at her for. She said, if you're going to explain this in public, you need to dumb it down because I don't know what you're talking about. So what she said to me was, don't talk about the legislative process because I don't know what that is. Like, talk to me in English so I can understand what happened here. So what I said to her was, this is what we know being factual at the moment. The governor is currently operating under executive emergency authorization authority that he was granted by the legislature. While he was operating under that, he instituted executive orders, which is what the laws that we're operating under currently. Those laws expire, and his powers expire on February 15th. So at midnight on the 15th, it's done. What the first part of the press conference says was, I'm going to extend the school mask mandates until the 28th, and then we're going to lift the mandate for masks in schools on the 28th. The part that he didn't clarify till later, that unfortunately a lot of people didn't hear, was he doesn't have that authority to do that. The part that he clarified was, I'm going to ask the legislature to extend that power until the 28th, and at which point we would lift the mask mandate in schools. What's missing here is his power under the emergency authorization ends on the 15th. So technically, what a lot of people heard, that I'm lifting the masks for the 28th, and superintendents and mayors, he actually said. So I thought I saw Mayor Casale. There he is. Hey, what do you want to do? He didn't technically have the authority to give me or Bob the authority to do that, because the only one who can grant him that authority at this point is the legislature. So he has to request, and the legislature can do that in one of two ways. They could either extend his emergency powers, which a lot have already expressed their opinions that they're not intending on doing that, or they could take certain executive orders and vote, take an action on that to extend them a certain period of time. That's what the process is. So my first call, before I, obviously all of us were talking, superintendent saying, all right, well, what does this mean? Like, are we doing this tomorrow? Timing-wise is great because we had a board meeting. I knew I have a room full of people tonight that are expecting me to say they're coming off. We're taking them off tomorrow. I can't do that yet for a couple of reasons that I think it's important for the public to know. One, I don't necessarily have the authority to do that, and at the moment, neither do you. The only thing that's on record right now is the 15th, it expires. If the legislature takes no action, then the 15th comes and goes, and there are no more masks in schools because there is no longer a mandate for it. Now, I've been told local boards may have the opportunity to add masks if they felt compelled to do so, which is something else that happened in the press conference, which I'll touch on in a second. But at the present time, that's the only thing we know for certain. Now, we also have this deadline of next Tuesday when the powers expand, or the powers rescind. The challenge to that is that leaves the legislature until next Tuesday to decide if they are going to extend or rescind. The challenge, bigger challenge on that is the legislature is not in session until tomorrow. So the session will begin tomorrow. If anyone's been through this process before or understood the legislative process, usually the opening day is ceremonial. There's not a lot of action taking place. I just at 5:30 tonight received notice from the Commissioner of Education that right now, and I'll read parts of it if you like, as a reminder, the governor is asking the legislature for his, so yesterday in his press conference was his intention or his preference. It wasn't, I'm telling you guys to go ahead and do this. He didn't have the authority to do it. I'm not knocking him. He just doesn't statutorily. What he does have is the ability to ask the legislature, this is what I'd like to do. I hope you would support it, by in turn voting on these executive orders. So at the present time, I don't know what the rules are. and no one else does either. There's probably a little bit more confusion based on people's interpretation as to what was said yesterday than what's in actuality. But what we do know is that the legislature opens their session tomorrow, and then typically they will begin introduction of bills on Thursday. We received notification late today from the State Department of Ed that the House of Representatives will be taking action on this on Thursday, and it's anticipated that the Senate will take action on Monday. So unfortunately for us, we won't really know what the rules are until early next week. Now, I also have to caution you. If the Senate votes this and it gets built into law, if any of you have ever seen a substantial law like this passed, it's not a light read, and I am not a lawyer. So what typically happens, and some of you will be familiar with this, those of you who work on policy, when there's a legislative change on policy, you'll get, in our case, CABE will send you a summary of the law that says this is what's changed, this is what you guys need to institute by law, and this is how you should do it. We get the same thing from legal counsel with laws like this. But we have to assume that legal counsel is going to need some time to comb through all of this stuff before they tell us what the rules are. At the present time, we don't know who has the authority to lift the mask mandate. We don't know when the actual date will be. The governor expressed his desire for them to be lifted on February 28th. That could very well be true. It could also not. It's not true until the legislature acts and tells us what the date is. It would be irresponsible for me and or you, but everyone thinks I have the authority to do it, which I'm telling you I don't, for me to make a declaration today that says, yep, we're taking masks off on the 28th, because I don't know who has the authority to do that at the present time. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And that doesn't mean that at some point someone's going to need to make a decision. It's also possible that a decision will be made for all of us, like it has over the last 2 years. My first question was to our representative, and I reached out to Representative Arnone. And I know he's sat here before and taken a lot of heat, so you got to pat him on the back when he does good things for you, and he does a lot of good things for us that you guys may not see. And that's not to say I pick him over other representative. Representative Hall has always been great to us as well. She is an expert on the financial workings of the state. So there's usually a race during the budget deliberations on who gets me the stuff first, either Tom or Carol. But in this particular instance, Representative Arnone has been sending me updates that were school related throughout the process. So I spoke with him. I appreciate Representative Arnone calling me at 9 o'clock last night, and I explained to him my concerns that I just explained to you. Is my understanding of this correct? Does he not really have the authority to do that? And that information was confirmed through Representative Arnone. It was his understanding that nothing happens until the legislature says it does. And their intention is to take, I've heard as much as 8, or as much as 11, or as little as 9 executive orders, which will be on CT.N. They had a public hearing today. I don't know how many were in it. I heard 11, but someone else told me 9. That those will be available. They were up for a public hearing today, that they are going to combine those executive orders into one bill for the legislature to vote on. Included in that lump of executive orders is the school mask mandate. So that's where the decision for masks will be coming from. Until we know what that is, there's a lot of speculation that, like anything else, they're trading on, well, I'll do this, you do that. There's a lot of stuff in these bills. I don't know everything that's in it. I don't want to even speculate based on hearsay of, well, this might happen and that might happen. What we know is they're intending on voting on this sooner rather than later, because we have that deadline of next Tuesday when everything goes away anyway. So if no action, there's no masks on the 16th. If there is action, they'll tell us when the masks are able to come down. There are also some things I need to bring to the board's attention that were said during this press conference that are concerning, at least on the surface, until we get more information. And again, I credit I believe it was a guy from the Waterbury Republican who asked the question, and it went to our Commissioner of Public Health that said, so if I understand this correctly, local boards are going to make this decision, superintendents are going to make this decision. Are you going to give them any help because they're not public health experts, but you're asking them to make these decisions in order to help let them decide whether or not it's appropriate to remove masks in schools? And the answer was yes, that the Department of Public Health and the State Department of Education would be giving us guidelines and metrics to use to help us make that decision, or whoever is responsible for the decision. At the present time, I got nothing. When I just checked before I walked in here, I have no idea what those metrics are going to be. I have no idea what the guidelines are going to be. All I know is they're telling us they're going to give them to us. But they better give them to us before we have to make a decision, if we're even asked to make a decision. But I just want people to understand that there's always more to the story than what you just hear in the initial news clip. When we talk about another thing that happened in the press conference that I found interesting was they had made reference to how well we've done with mitigation strategies in schools to slow the transmission of the virus. And they've highlighted certain things that we've done, such as masks, vaccination rates for staff members, social distancing, and all that. And then they hinted that, yes, there will be guidance that if you're not going to have masks in schools, we're going to tell you what you need to do. What I'm not going to do is say, you know what, guys, let's just rip them off. And then 2 weeks later have the state say, well, you ripped them off. You should have done X, Y, and Z. And then have to tell everybody here, sorry, guys, you got to put them back on. Like, we need the information from them first. I don't know when we're going to get it, if we're going to get it. The decision may be made for you. I don't know that now. But I know that there's a lot of people who reached out to me today saying, the governor said it's your call. And the reality is it's not at the moment. It might be. I don't know what the fate of the legislature is going to be, but unfortunately, that's the timing on this. There's another couple of things that just are interesting that sometimes they don't always think through, but are in reality. For instance, has anybody traveled in the last 2 years? What did you have to wear on an airplane? Whose rule is that? It's a federal rule, right? Guess what public transportation is? That federal rule comes from the U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services. It is 100% feasible that we can remove masks.
Can we stop the chatter while the superintendent's talking?
So,
Please. There's a lot of people that want to talk tonight, and we're going to give everyone the respect that they deserve, no matter what they're here to talk about. So please.
thank you, Madam Chair. So, in the event that we are able to remove masks for kids, the way it stands right now, there's a federal rule that they have to wear their masks on the bus because that's public transportation. Not my rule, their rule. We also have Head Start that also commingle in our Stowe Early Learning Center with our pre-K STEAM kids. Head Start is a federal program. They're working under, we got notification today that no matter what your state mask rule is, it is an expectation that Head Start students and staff and anyone else that they interact with, including staff members, don't forget, a lot of those programs work hand in hand, not just with our kids or the STEAM kids or integrated kids, but ECDC is also in that building. We don't know the rules. We have a declaration today that says anybody in that building with those kids have to wear masks. We need to explore that further because we can't violate the rules because those programs are federally funded and it's a different set of rules. So there's a lot of unknowns when it comes to this, but the reality is it's going to be a last minute decision if it is something that's left up to either me or the 9 of you. So that the public is aware, I don't know when I'm going to get this information, but my commitment to you is once I get enough information to be able to give you a reasonable explanation as to the process and what the rules are, that I will notify the board. And I had a conversation with the chair that said, in the event the board believes it's in the best interest to either have a public discussion amongst the 9 of you or include public input if that's required, and or maybe there's something that requires a vote, that the chair has committed to holding a special meeting as soon as it's feasible in order to make that decision. I just have to warn you, the decision may be made for you. We don't know. It's all over the place as far as what the actual rules are going to be. But I think it's important for those watching that have an interest in this topic that the chair has already indicated to me that we will call a special meeting to have that conversation publicly so people will understand where we're coming from with regards to whether or not the mask mandate will or when be lifted in schools. Those who are very passionate about on either side of this understand this is just me being speculative at this point. I think there has to be an expectation that they are going to come off. I just don't know what the rules are as far as when and who makes that decision. So at some point, I think there's an expectation.
I'm going to have to ask you to leave.
Okay.
I'll call a recess because we can't.
It's actually not what I said, but
This is the third time.
good? Okay. So in the event that it becomes, an issue that the board has to vote on, we'll certainly bring it to you guys. In the event that it's left up to me or it's left up to somebody else, I will certainly let the board know as soon as possible. But until we have more information as to what the actual rules are, unfortunately, when a public statement is made on one day, everyone just expects we're going to react the next day. I really wish we could, but the reality is that we can't. So the last thing that I wanted to mention, Madam Chair, was, as I stated earlier at the beginning of this, it was really my expectation tonight to use my time to speak about some of the things that we're doing in our schools. It was my hope to actually invite some of our kids to participate in this process with us. But because of the fate of this meeting wasn't really decided until late last week, that wasn't ample time to get kids here. And I want to give them enough time to prepare in the event that we're able to invite them. But I was going to start tonight with some exciting news about progress we've made in our graduation rates. However, given the fact that I had to give a lengthy explanation on the recent developments on masks, which I never wanted to talk about again, but I had to, and the fact that we have a pretty packed house tonight where I'm sure a lot of people want to talk, I'm going to postpone that until the meeting of the 8th, where I'm hopefully able to actually bring kids to help explain some of the work that we're doing, if you're okay with that. Okay? That concludes the superintendent's report.
Madam Chair, can we call recess? This is.
call the meeting back to order. Okay, we're going to move on to audiences tonight. We have quite a few audience members, so we're going to keep it at 3 minutes. Just a couple of notes regarding audiences, because I know some people haven't spoken before. You must be an Enfield resident to participate in the audience portion of the meeting. We ask that you state your name and your address. One thing to note, board members cannot respond back to you during this portion of the meeting, but the board members can respond during the board member comments if they choose to do so. We also cannot respond to student or personnel matters. We strongly ask that you refrain from personalities. We also strongly ask that you refrain from yelling out, which we just discussed, during audiences or board members during their comments. And like I said, we'll allow 3 minutes. William Delaney.
I'm Bill Delaney. I'm a teacher at JFK Middle School, 155 Raffia Road. I'm not here to talk about pizza. I'm not here to talk about masks. First, I just want to thank all of you for working hard, for supporting us. You have all faced pressures in recent months that you probably didn't expect, challenges that you have to face, and I think you're doing a good job. Speaking of challenges, I've been doing this for a while, and this is certainly the most challenging year as a teacher that probably has ever been. Not only for teachers, for students, administrators, parents. So I want to recognize that. We're grinding it out every day. These kids show up and they're joyful to be back. I've seen tears of joy from these kids. They're good to be back. And they're really working hard every day. They're engaged in lessons. Do we face some challenges going forward? Yes. It's apparent there's deficits. There's deficits in academic habits. There's deficits in classroom behavior. But that's what we do. That's our job as educators, is to rise to the occasion and help them. We're here to help them. That's what we do as teachers. We're all glad to be back. I just want to thank parents. This has been 2 years of nonstop, just different things coming at you. And I do want to thank parents. The students, incredible job. But I do have to address the tone of the meetings. It's just not helpful. It's not helpful. I get that there's political differences. I'm a social studies teacher. I get it. We have to face those too. We're Americans. This is not how we deal with problems. This is not how we solve problems. This stuff, that's not how we should do it.
Mr. Delaney, unfortunately, your time is up.
Oh my God, I have like 10 more minutes. All right, thank you.
Kelsey McGuire Bruce.
Sorry, got it. Can I start again? Kelsey McGuire Bruce, 63 Nealons Road. First of all, I would like to thank all of the Board of Education members for giving their time to education. Mr. Drezek and Mr. Longy, your leadership is unmatched, and I thank you for everything you do. Like so many other Enfield teachers, I am born and raised in this town. As a child, I attended Parkman Elementary School, JFK Middle School, and graduated from Enfield High School. I went off to college with full intention of returning to teach in this town. I left a job teaching the same grade in another town where my salary was more to come back to teach in Enfield. I did this because I had great teachers who inspired me to learn, encouraged me when things got hard, and supported me in all aspects of my life. I, like so many others, want to be that teacher for my students. I start like this tonight because it is important that everyone knows how dedicated Enfield teachers are and have been for years. Each day, teachers walk into their classroom with a list of items they want to achieve that day. It may be to help Joey learn long division or finally find a book that Kara loves. It may not be academic related. The teacher may need to check on how Sam's mom made out in surgery or if Sarah got to see her dad this weekend. The list goes on and on. Personally, my goals are to encourage children to be engaged in school and find learning tasks fun and challenging. Last week, my students were given a gift-wrapped biography book with clues on the front to help them guess who it was. This created suspense and excitement for our new reading unit. Students then read the back of their biography and explored classmates' topics to find out connections they had, leading them to determine who was in their book club group. Our school just finished our mid-year iReady testing for reading and math. We had 53% of students achieve their end-of-year goal in reading, and 34% of students achieve their end-of-year goal in math. What this means is these students made a year's worth of progress in just 5 months. Students are learning and growing both socially and academically every day. Enfield teachers always have the best intentions. They dedicate hours outside of the classroom to support the whole child. But we are human. No matter how much we may try to ignore, words hurt. We can try to avoid hearing it, but as Mr. Drezek said, it does always seem to find us. Teaching is an art form. Every teacher brings their craft to the table. It's why every child finds a teacher they love. We are all different, but we all have one thing in common. We do this job for our students, and we work hard to do it for every child each and every day. I look forward to the day when that is respected again.
Jessica Sewell. My name is Jessica Sewell. I live at 10 Brook Road in Enfield. I'm a 4th grade teacher at Prudence Crandall, where I've taught for 6 years, and I want to share a few important things that are happening in my classroom. It's February 8th today, and my 4th graders finally know how to share their opinions. They can share materials, information, feelings, and respectfully disagree with one another. And you can ask, why is this a great thing? Aren't 4th graders supposed to be able to know how to do these things? Well, when they come from a typical kindergarten, 1st grade, or 2nd grade, or 3rd grade year, they come to me with minimal need to practice these sharing skills. However, these last 2 years, I've spent a lot of time teaching respectful dialogue, modeling that with them, modeling in front of them with coworkers. I tell them to think like a teacher. I tell them find one idea or statement, no matter how small, that you may have some common ground with. I tell them the quote from Ruth Bader Ginsburg, "You can disagree without being disagreeable." Some of the best gifts I received this year were notes of love and appreciation from parents and caregivers, thanking me for extra time, love, effort that I share with these kids every day. Sometimes kids can ask for attention, love, and guidance in very unlovable ways. Behavior is communication, and I have to listen carefully to understand what my students are struggling with and what they're trying to tell me. It's taken years of classroom experience to become proficient at interpreting challenging behavior. And those are the times that teachers dig a little deeper and find that one thing, what common ground can I find with this student to open a respectful dialogue? Those are the times that I pause and recall the moments from our daily morning meeting. What's a shared hobby that they love? What's the name of their dog? What was their mom's favorite color? I dig a little deeper and find that one thing. What common ground can I find to open a respectful dialogue?
Having these opportunities to celebrate and build relationships and build their social and emotional health this year has been just as critical as teaching multiplication, fractions, theme, or character traits. I tell my kids they're the best fourth graders in the school, and they rise to those expectations. We use the diagnostic evaluation from iReady in reading and math 3 times a year to monitor student growth. My students were asked to review their score and set a goal. I told them how much I believed in them. I told them that I knew they could do it, and I wanted them to meet their goal and exceed it. When we were finished the math piece, one of my students went up 71 points. I celebrated and cheered that student privately and publicly. On Fridays, we have a moment at the end of the day where we share one great moment of the week. One of my students, completely unprompted, stood up and said, "Let's take a moment to recognize this student." A big round of applause for growing their brain by 70 points on the diagnostic. Every kid cheered for this student. I don't know if anyone's ever cheered for that student quite so passionately, but that student went home believing in their abilities and knowing that they are loved. Celebrating our successes together has been a joy that I have not experienced quite so deeply as I have these past 2 years. From the times of struggle come the sweetest rewards, and this is how we're moving towards normalcy. Finding the common ground, no matter how small, so we can disagree without being disagreeable. Thank you.
Matt Schmidt.
Matt Schmidt, 1304 Bigelow Commons. Good evening, Board of Education members. It is good to be back in person, and I thank this board for the opportunity to engage in public audience again. We are on the precipice of an important decision. The state school mask mandate will soon be ending. The choice of whether to continue with masks in schools will fall on each individual district. We may not know when, but it will fall on you. The greatest voice of opposition to eliminating masks in schools at this point seems to be coming from the teachers union. And while the teachers union does represent the views of many of its members, it should be noted that the views of our educators are not monolithic. There are many teachers who are against continuing a mask mandate. I can speak to this because I know a lot of public school teachers. In fact, I was married to one for almost 20 years, and I have close friends who are teachers, one who was even a finalist for State Teacher of the Year. I have a special appreciation for what they go through on a day-to-day basis and what they have had to endure during the pandemic. The flexibility that was required, the stress of having to restructure their whole method of teaching, the loss of meaningful classroom interactions with their students. I witnessed firsthand the great amount of work and the struggle to do what needed to be done in a time of crisis. But now that crisis is over. N95 masks and vaccines are widely available, so now others don't have to wear masks to protect you. The governor even said as much when he announced the removal of the state mandate. But instead of trying to convince you why it's okay to unmask these children, maybe it's better to put a question forth. If we can't get rid of the masks now, what is necessary to reach that point? Because there is nothing on the horizon that will further reduce the threat of COVID. I mean, are we suggesting that the students of Enfield wear masks in school indefinitely? So again, I ask this board and the superintendent and anyone else who would like to respond, what more will it take to get these masks off these kids? It is already widely acknowledged that the vaccines don't prevent transmission, so vaccinating children won't make a difference. What is it then? Or are you really thinking about keeping these kids in masks forever? How brutal that truly would be. In my experience with teachers, I have found them for the most part to be kind and compassionate. That is the route I hope this board and superintendent take today or whenever the time may come, the kind and compassionate route. And I hope that there are teachers out there, teachers brave enough to stand up to their union and stand up for their students and show their compassion. To all the teachers watching or listening, I know you want to see your students' faces again. I know you miss their smiles. This is the time to let the masks go. Thank you.
Liz Davis.
Guess I'll take this off. Okay, I got a few topics. Elizabeth Davis, and I reside at 201 North Maple Street. First of all, Mr. Superintendent, and to this whole board, I apologize for what just happened with those pizzas. For any adult parent to act like that, I'll be the one to apologize, because I don't want you to think that it has anything to do with the majority of the parents in this town. So with that said, I have a few things I want to bring up. And I watch a few people sit up there, nod their heads when our educators talk, and they smile like you understand. But you're the ones rallying this group to come after our educators, to about doing all these conspiracy theories. And what really stunned me today, because believe me, I have loads to talk about in 3 minutes, it's not going to be covered, is an email went out to another local church trying to get more people to rally to come to this Board of Ed to talk about a pizza assignment. I mean, that's what churches are doing now? Really? I mean, that's pretty sad. So if we want to start having all our churches in town that don't pay taxes, and you want to start having input on my child's public education, start paying taxes. Okay? Let's make it fair. The assignment went out. It was a mistake. They took ownership. Okay, my child's in a public school, went through the health and all that stuff in JFK, and they're fine. We have quite a few students in this audience. Why don't you ask them if they're offended? Why don't you actually ask the kids that go to Enfield Public School how they feel about a mask, instead of a bunch of parents that don't have a child in the school, but then here we go to the next topic. They don't have a child, but they'll do videos and say they're so upset about this pizza chart, and they're a dad of 2 kids. But now they don't like what's being taught. But this dad of 2 kids have no problem going on social media and saying the 2 parts when they talk about transgender students. Well, they should use the bathroom only because of their V&P. I really don't want to say that on public TV, but they had no problem putting that out for a bunch of kids to see. But they're the same parents coming here speaking, complaining about a pizza chart. Give me a break. Let's stop it. Conspiracy theories across the board. We got the best teachers in this state. We got the best superintendent in this state. I'm done with people disrespecting them, and I'm really done with elected officials that are behind this. Do what's right by all these kids, or step the hell down. Thank you. Thank you, sorry for my swearing. I loved it.
Charlie Hulovich.
Sorry. Here, you can sit in my lap, okay? You want me to read it for you? Yeah? Okay. You want to say your name in the microphone? Go ahead.
Hi,
Say I'm Charlie Hulovich.
I'm Charlie Hulovich.
How old are you?
I'm 7.
And she wrote her own speech. Do you want to read it, or do you want Mommy to? You want me to? Okay. Charlie wanted to say, thank you for my good education. Thank you for working with my mommy. And thank you for giving peace. Do you want to say anything else?
Tracy Jarvis.
Tracy Jarvis, 206 North Maple Street. I know the board would choose to move from this pizza assignment at JFK, but the parents do not. I understand that it was stated this assignment was accidentally given in its entirety when page 1 was the intentional assignment. My page 1 takeaways are, I don't know who I can have sex with unless I ask. I need to know my sexual partner's wants. Do they want oral sex? Where do they want to be touched? If they want to hear dirty words, do they want to do all things or just some things? And I need to start being comfortable talking about sex for the purpose of fun. Please tell us how teaching self-responsibility and social skills and decision-making is in this.
I just want you to stop. I stopped your time because you were being interrupted. We all have to be quiet.
I
Let her
appreciate
speak.
that.
Okay, I'm going to start the timer, and I'll cue you when I start it because I stopped it so that you wouldn't lose your time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'd like the board to tell us how this is teaching responsibility, self-control, and social skills and decision-making, because that's what was spoken that this assignment was. This assignment is prompting kids to become sexually active before their time. Youth don't even know how to navigate platonic relationships well. So why introduce sexual relationships? 13-year-olds don't have sexual preferences. Sexual preferences come with sexual maturity. So now we're to insist that our kids to come to the fullness of their sexuality at age 13? We should not be encouraging youth to explore each other's bodies with multiple partners in an open environment for any reason. If somebody is doing that or asking them to do that, they should be taught to tell a responsible adult who then reports it. This assignment is normalizing and encouraging youth to be sexually promiscuous and deviant. I understand we need to teach kids boundaries, but you are giving them way more information than they are psychologically ready to handle at this age. By doing this, you open up doors for them to have partners that are older than them, increasing statutory situations. You open up doors for abusive family members and grown-ups in their lives. I understand there's a segment of society that have major traumatic sexual issues within their history. I, too, long to resource them. However, choosing to inform a child who was sodomized at age 11 that they can stand for themselves and choose to give oral instead is appalling. Are our public schools now running programs for sexually abused children at the expense of the unviolated? Are we now hypersexualizing every youth because some are hurting? All youth need a safe haven from our overtly sexualized culture. As a pastor of New Day Church, I have poured 10 years of my life into building an environment where youth can be healthy and have healthy community. We teach Enfield children self-respect, self-control, and self-denial. I will continue to expand my energy to resource this community, and I ask that you do the same. Take a deeper look. Are there more assignments that have the potential to corrupt the morals of our minors? It's really your job to know. This has gone too far, and we parents are not feckless or intimidated to stand for what we believe in. We will fight for the purity and protection of our children.
Ryan Schutz.
Ryan Schutz, 106 Church Street. Good evening. It's so great to be back in here and seeing some smiley faces and some angry eyeballs. In my opinion, the Board of Ed has gone through great lengths to silence us with opposing views in the name of health. 2 weeks ago, canceled board and goes to Zoom. And yet here we are, no mask, shoulder to shoulder, room full of people, and tonight it's just fine. Again, telling me it's about safety. We have never once gone after any teachers, nothing but respect for what they do. Can't imagine their difficulties they face every day. We've been nothing but kind and respectful. Yes, a little emotional at times, but we are dealing with medical tyranny. I started coming to board just for masks, but slowly this opened another door, which I was completely ignorant to. Last policy meeting I attended, I was informed there is a transgender policy already in effect that states for restroom accessibility, students shall have access to the restroom or locker room that corresponds to their gender identity. I don't see how this policy is supposed to make sure kids are safe. Yes, have a separate restroom, but to be allowed in the bathroom that corresponds to their gender identity, I'm not seeing it. Would love for someone on the board to explain how this improves safety of the children. Did a similar policy that allowed this pizza assignment through? And we parents get that it's just a mistake or it never happened, depending on who you ask. How does something like this get approved and not immediately removed? How do we make sure there's not more assignments just like that out there? What's being done to make sure this will never happen again? Could this have been prevented if the policy that allowed this assignment through was never in the schools in the first place? Very similar to this trans policy, yet we can change it before accident does happen. Now that your hands aren't tied by Lamont's executive order, which maybe they are, but I don't know. This is your chance to finally stand up for these kids and do the right thing. Make it optional for masks like we've been asking for all along. Stop putting these innocent children through this political madness. If not, school will be the only place that's forcing kids into masks. What's that message teaching them? Can't be good for their mental health either. Prudence Crandall sent me an email that has a chart. The chart shows how long, if a person is infected with COVID, it was spread and the different exposures with different masks. To sum it up, no mask, 15 minutes to contract COVID, 20 minutes with cloth mask, 30 minutes with surgical, 2.5 hours with N95, which we know most of the kids all fall into the cloth mask. They're in school for over 6 hours a day, and the information your school sent shows they're only protected for 20 minutes at most. It's only 5 minutes longer than without a mask. Let's give these kids their life back. Let them see their friends, teachers, smiling faces, and any and all very important facial expressions that they haven't seen in 2 years. Honestly, I don't know if my daughter was even able to see her teacher smile last year. Think about that. Enough is enough. Those who choose to wear them do. Those who choose them not don't. Unmask our kids. Thank you.
Jonathan Grand.
Good evening. Jonathan Grande, 33 Spruceland Road, Enfield, Connecticut. Two topics. Superintendent Drezek spoke about them. I just want to add a little my thoughts on those. One, the masks. I feel like it's turned into a complicated Gordian knot. I feel like I've been gaslighted. I watched the press release. I heard Ned Lamont say the masks are coming off. There's no more mandate on the 28th, and that is up to the superintendent or the Board of Education. I didn't hear what you mentioned after the fact until tonight. So I want to commend you, Superintendent. I know that you drafted a letter, sent it to the board, and said that you will comply with whatever the board wants to do. That's commendable. You recognize their authority over you. I'd ask the board that you recognize the authority over yourselves. That's us, the public, the taxpayers, the parents, and the teachers, and the people who live in this town. We respectfully ask that you do have the authority and to eliminate the masks and make them optional for those who feel they need to wear them. Secondly, on the pizza assignment, the assignment was crude, it lacked good taste, it was blunt, and as many have said, it was offensive. However, I do understand, as was stated, it may have been an accident. We all make mistakes, so that's okay. However, in business, when mistakes happen, there's things that are taking place to make them stop. We use words in business like turn back and escape. Those in manufacturing will know these words. Those who don't, I'll give you a 5-second primer. A turn back is when an error occurs internally and it's discovered before it goes to the next stop within a process, be that a product, a correspondence, an email, a work assignment, whatever the case may be. A brief investigation is performed and the mistake is prevented. An escape, however, is much more severe. An escape is when something leaves the internal environment and makes it to the outside to the customer. An escape costs more money. An escape has more error proofing that needs to take place. What happens is there is a root cause analysis performed. There's also a corrective action that's to be taken so that the escape does not occur again. The pizza assignment was an escape. It was not a turn back. It made it to the customers being the teachers, and the ultimate customers being the parents and the teachers. The assignment made it past a lot of gates or a lot of processes that should have prevented it. The first was it didn't get stopped from development. Who developed the assignment? Who approved the assignment? Who released the assignment? Who posted the assignment? These are all steps that were overlooked. Who issued the assignment? In some cases, the assignment was completed and worse, turned in to teachers.
Mr. Grande, your 3 minutes is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. John Power.
John Power, 33 Laurie Drive, Enfield. I've been watching the board meetings on the news, and I was hoping tonight I could bring some comments to. I wanted to thank the board and the superintendent for the support, and maybe some of my comments could change some of the opinion in the room and direct it in a more positive direction. As far as I know, I'm the senior teacher at JFK Middle School. And I have worked for superintendents all the way back to Dr. Mager up to Mr. Drezik. I've worked for every principal JFK has ever had. My ensembles at JFK have played in Symphony Hall in Boston, Mechanics Hall in Worcester, Allstate. My colleagues, numerous awards, academic, athletic, and otherwise. The point I'm trying to make with the comments I hear in the news is you folks seem to be under incredible scrutiny and pressure. It's a very difficult time, as Mr. Delaney said, to be an educator. And I think you support us. I wanted to come and support you. The one thing that has been consistent in this town for over 30 years that I've worked here is every single board of education, every single superintendent, every single principal has been about what's right for kids. They take into account the facts, they get the information, and they make good decisions. And I think you've done a great job. Despite the awards I just mentioned, I had a middle school band concert last week, the first time in 2 years we played in public, and you've never seen kids so excited. More excited than when I had them in Boston Symphony Hall. It was incredible. I hope the people in the room are listening, because this is what Enfield's really all about. The support, again, for years, all the way back to Dr. Mager, and my time here has been incredible. And you guys support us. I think I wanted to come tonight, and I know you're supported. Having lived in town and been a teacher in town, I probably talk to 100 parents a week going back. I know half the town. And there's a lot of people on your side, despite some of the rhetoric. So I was hoping tonight that my comments might give you a little breath of fresh air. Thanks for letting me speak. Thank you.
Ryan Moore.
Good evening. Ryan Moore, 10 Ryfield Drive. So now is the time to show your true colors. No longer can we hide and say your hands are tied. No longer can you say you would have the courage to do what is right for our children if only someone else would let you. I would argue this board has shown its true colors, unfortunately, over and over. Ellington stood with parents when this board would not. When parents were outraged over JFK collecting the preferred sex acts of minors, a violation of the law, Mr. Hamry lied and said this was not taught in our schools, as did Ms. Pickett, who said the assignment was not delivered to students. The health coordinator told parents the truth they already knew, though. This assignment was given out and used in class. What an abysmal failure this board has been in its response to parents. Instead of facing this issue, they use the excuse of masks to run and hide, claiming the unmasked were a health hazard. The first chance they had, this board used our police force to infringe on the First Amendment rights of those parents who dare challenge their policies. Most parents stayed outside, unwilling to comply, and a few complied in order to be heard. The second chance they got after the pizza assignment was revealed, this board decided to use deception instead of force. They claimed the same parents they were forced to deal with unmasked for a year were now a health hazard and imminent danger to those around them. I'll remind everyone that these same board members were wearing cloth masks for 2 years while parents told them the masks are worthless, a point finally conceded by the CDC. I'll remind everyone that the Connecticut death statistics I first quoted almost a year ago have remained almost exactly the same for those under 19 who died with COVID. An 11-year-old girl recently died during the pandemic in our town. She did not die from COVID. She committed suicide. And our superintendent has the unbelievable nerve to say, "I find it difficult to get lectured week after week." Well, Mr. Drezik, I am so sorry for your difficulty. What a burden it is you must bear, but our children are suffering from much more than acne. Shame on you for pretending that's the worst of it. The loneliness, anxiety, and fear we are heaping upon children because we are too cowardly to stand up is unforgivable. Increases in learning disabilities, failure rates, childhood obesity, depression, drug overdoses, and suicides deserve better than the snarky dismissal you gave them. We do not allow our kids to enjoy the smiles and laughter and social interaction they so desperately need. From the age of 2 years old, we force them to hide their faces on each other, forced to remain apart at a safe distance. History will look back on us with horror at our cowardice. It is not too late, though. I pray this board will tonight change course. Stop pitting yourselves against parents. Stop forcing teachers to teach materials that violate student rights, parental rights, and the law. Stop dividing our community. Stop the mask mandate. We can still work together. Thank you.
Emma Dunn.
Hi, I am Emma Dunn at 3 Kennedy Drive. I would like to say thanks to the Board of Ed for the support to the teachers. Our teachers are really great and they overcome any possible obstacle, and they still meet the needs of every student. My teachers challenge me, but always support me when I don't think I can. And this is why I'm proud to be part of Enfield Schools.
Thank you. Sheila Monroe.
Good evening. Sheila Monroe, 3 Stacy Lane. I want to start by thanking all of you for the way you abruptly decided to close down the meetings and go remote. It was brilliant and truly in the best interest of the town. Parents went to the internet and brought their message straight to the people as a whole, and I hope they continue to do so. Many citizens responded in disgust and had no idea that health class contained so much smut. No teacher, and I'm saying this out of respect for them, because I have been a volunteer for countless hours and many years and have seen what they go through on a daily basis, should they ever be put in this situation. Most of their careers have been trying to avoid such topics with students. They can't even give hugs to innocently comfort a child out of someone may misinterpret the action, yet they are required to talk about sexual preferences. A topic like this does not stay in the classroom. It's the talk that spreads like wildfire and becomes disturbing distraction. Not all teachers are sex education teachers. They are not therapists. They are not nurses. They are not parents to these children. They are teachers hired to inspire learning, character, educate, and engage the minds of their students with subjects like math, science, English, history, and the arts, preparing them for a bright and successful future for their job. It is their job. I have to address something very disturbing as well. Many seem to think that if you don't currently have a child in the system, because I'm a grandparent, you have no right to make your voices heard. This is very wrong for one simple fact. Children grow up and are vested in the fact that they live, work, and serve in this community with the best minds and character that we provide, and it does take a village to raise a child. Parents have come to this body for months just asking for you to stand to unmask our children. One day this body, not those parents, will have to live with their conscience on how these decisions were not based on medical science, but on political science, and that is shameful. One more question, one I have asked consistently with no answer. When will you make the decision to install air filtration systems to improve air quality in all the schools? Don't you care about the health of the teachers and students? This should have been the first action using the funds from the state with the COVID Relief Fund. I am only left to answer it myself. You will never take this action to protect them because none of you have that kind of leadership. If you can't make these decisions, I have to say, then you need to step away from where you are. Thank you.
Peter Janitis.
My name is Peter Janitis, 3 Farmstead Circle. I'm going to start with something I wasn't even going to talk about tonight. A lot of the speakers that have been up here already, Sheila, Ryan, about 5 or 6 of them already who have spoken on certain issues and have not said anything bad about any teachers here. That's right. They're not saying stuff bad about you. There may be another fringe element out there, but it's not this group. Well, my congratulations go out to the town council last night for allowing the people of Enfield to speak on a very controversial issue for over 2 hours. Unlike this board that is still controlling speech of concerned parents to 3 minutes. Also, congratulations to this board at its last in-person meeting for a well-played move created by, I'm not sure who, whether it was Tina, Ellen, Chris, leadership, or any combination thereof, for stifling the speech of many concerned parents from speaking on a couple issues that this democratically controlled Board of Education does not or cannot deal with. 1, the masking of kids in schools now and at the end of the month. The masking of parents at a Board of Ed meeting. And please don't give me that phony crisis that Ellen Zappo Sousa tried to sell on us as an excuse. And also, this Pizzagate thing. But my concern tonight, my main concern here, is whether or not this Board of Education, not the superintendent, not the town manager, but you people, the Board of Education for Enfield, Connecticut, when the governor says that the mask mandate, or the legislature says the mask mandate, is going to be up to the individual school districts to determine their mask mandate policy. Will this board commit to allowing masks to be optional? Also, again, I didn't want to speak to this. This whole idea about it was a mistake. It was a mistake. I'm tired of listening to this mistake. I taught school in this town for 38 years. I negotiated 2 damn good contracts for the teachers. I know how the system works. You get a group of teachers to form a committee and write the curriculum. Then that is passed on to the whole department usually. It may have changed now because we don't have department heads. But then it's got to go up to the health coordinator. Then it gets down and the board. You have a curriculum committee. You go over it. How this got passed down, where the mistake was made, I don't know. I'm not blaming the teacher who did it. The teacher maybe should have looked over the material. The one I feel bad for the most, or blame the most, is the coordinator that never should have even been there to get out by accident.
Amanda Marquez.
Amanda Marquez, 8 Hoover Lane. I have sat before you since August talking about the mask mandates and the physical, mental, and emotional harm it has had on our children. I've referred to numerous studies that show just how disgusting and filthy masks can be, and yet the board seems relatively unfazed. Those in favor of masking still set in their resolve that this is in the best interest of our children. Misleading the public into thinking these very masks are reliable protection in the spread of coronavirus is a failure of leadership. Mandating a person continue to use a medical intervention proven ineffective is nothing more than making them play pretend. We know one fact, that transmission in schools is extremely low. The fact is, we just don't see transmission in schools like we do in the community, said the superintendent, in reference to kids wearing masks. Yet the fact of the matter is, the very adults trying to enforce the mandates haven't even been able to wear their masks correctly. They're continually touching and adjusting them while others wear them completely under their nose. They also remove the mask entirely to talk with no regard of proper donning or doffing procedures required for mask wearing. The infectious disease doctor on this very board can't even stop himself from touching his mask improperly, essentially deeming it ineffective. Yet somehow we are to believe that children are experts at proper mask procedure and are wearing them correctly and safely during the 7-hour school day. We know they are not, and it states right in your board policy that restrictions on freedom of dress shall be applied whenever the mode of dress under question constitutes a safety or health hazard for students. This board has said, and I quote, "There is harm to masking kids. We are mandated from the governor. We're handcuffed. Lamont may leave the decision up to the individual towns, and if he did, then you have the right to come here and say you're in control of the masks. Do something as a Board of Education." Well, the day has finally come where the decision is in your lap, and you will now be the ones forcing this tyrannical mandate. You no longer have the governor's executive order to hide behind. I don't like mandates either. I don't like being told something. I would rather do it myself, says the superintendent. You would rather be the one forcing the children to mask against their free will? Masking is a personal decision, and it's one that should be made on an individual basis by parents for their own child, not a blanket mandate by governing officials. The definition of liberty is the power of choice. Most people would agree that this is the way a society should function. Liberty and justice for all. Words we just stood and recited. Our government is telling us they know better than we do. They make the best choice for our children. It is clear that the fight for our freedom to choose not to mask our children is still one we have to stand for. With that being said, I'm asking you to at least have enough conviction to say that parents make the best decision for their children, not the government, elected officials, nor the Board of Education. One made based on fear but not based on courage to allow the parents to choose. The Board of Education is elected to determine educational policy, not our medical interventions. Are you willing to take personal responsibility for all the children you force these mandates upon? As we quickly move towards a totalitarian state, and another mask mandate surely does just that, I want to remind you of the first sentence in your Board of Education mission statement. It states, "We believe public education is an essential component of a free and democratic society." You're right. This is still a free country, and free men do not need permission from their government. Their government needs permission from them. And for masks, there's a simple solution, and one that doesn't mean tossing out our individual civil liberties, and it goes like this. Those who choose to wear masks can do so, and those who don't are not mandated against their free will.
Patrick Flaherty?
Do I need to give my residential address, or can I give the 155 Raffier Road address too? Oh, all right. I'm just curious. 78 Jackson Road, Enfield, Connecticut. 18 months ago, it was irresponsible and wrong to say the following statements. COVID is similar to the flu. Many people hospitalized or dying only have positive tests, but are not sick from COVID. Comorbidities are a major factor in hospitalizations and death. Cloth and surgical masks offer no protection from transmission or respiratory diseases or viral particles. It is important to protect the vulnerable. PCR tests are not an adequate diagnostic tool. Today, the CDC not only acknowledges but advertises each of these points. This is good news, since this is the only authoritative source of information Since the only authoritative source of information has changed its stance, we are now in agreement. At the last in-person meeting, the one that wasn't canceled, Mr. Drezek gave a speech and advocated for all of us to think critically about why we are not seeing the amount of spread in our schools like we are in the community. Given all the facts, he said, there are only one conclusion he can come to. The only difference is that the masks are to be worn at all times in schools. What I see is transmission is low in our building, and everyone has to wear a mask, so the masks must work. I applaud the superintendent for advocating for all of us to think this through critically, but there is one very problematic flaw in his analysis. Can you think of anything that was left out of your analysis, Mr. Drezek? I know we can't dialogue, but maybe you can write it down. What characteristics of a school population may be a factor that differs from community population? The school populations are comprised of children. The one known and universally agreed upon point is that children are not highly susceptible to the disease, nor are they vectors for transmission. This has been borne out by the data over the last 2 years. I thank Mr. Drezek for at least explaining his reasoning through this, explaining his reasoning, and through this back and forth, this can be important. This is what gives us a chance to have a more critical analysis and conclude information and perspectives that are not our own. But the superintendent's analyst did not include the single most important fact set that parents, medical professionals, and yes, the CDC have repeatedly stated, and by that standard, it fails as an example of critical thinking. Rather, it serves as an example of correlation fallacy. Put masks on a population largely not susceptible to the virus, then claim victory when said population has low incidences. It shows how mass marketing and personal bias can create blind spots for all of us. But here is the important point. By offering his explanation, the superintendent has provided an opportunity for us to dialogue and to learn from each other, and I thank him for that. The only way we can find a better solution for our kids by actually engaging with each other.
Mr. Flaherty, unfortunately, your time is up.
Time to end masks. Thank you.
Dina St. George.
There we go. Good evening, and thank you. I do want to thank you. I know that it's a volunteer position. I appreciate what all you do for the town. I wanted to talk about masking. The issue of masking as a choice is not political, and it's not anti-teacher. It's about the freedom to choose. There are no mandates in a free society. Mandates are inconsistent with freedom. In a free society, we are free to speak, free to reject scientific dogma. We are free to be political or apolitical. In a free society, we have choice. The introduction of mandates in America is a wake-up call to ask ourselves, are we free or are we slaves? Without exemptions, there is no informed consent. Without informed consent, there is no choice. Without choice, there are no rights. Without rights, there is no freedom. Yet, there is always your power of consent to accept or deny, to tolerate or not. The Constitution exists to protect individual liberty and individual property, and the foundation of all rights are the rights to private property. The right to private property is a right of each individual human being to own himself. Parents need to make the decision whether their child wears a mask or not. It is scientifically and medically documented that children aren't in danger from COVID. They are far more likely to die of the seasonal flu, murder, drowning, or traffic accidents than COVID. The CDC data, as of December of 2021, stated that there have been 5,034 hospitalizations for children in the 22 months that COVID has been in the United States. And in that 22-month span, there have been 644 COVID deaths among children. The CDC, on its own data, estimated that the 2019 and 2020 flu season resulted in more than 52,000 hospitalizations and 434 deaths. That was over a span of 7 months. A mask mandate imposes a burden on children with no scientific justification. The flu is worse for children than COVID-19, according to the CDC's own data. All available evidence shows that children should be able to return to normal life without masks if they choose. Those people who send another message is not following the science. I hope that you consider following the science when you think about unmasking the kids, because I think it should be the parents' choice whether their children are masked. Thank you.
Sherry Jackson.
Good evening, Sherry Jackson, 119 Cottage Road, Enfield, Connecticut. The governor was quoted as saying, "I think that we are in a good position to phase out the requirement that masks be worn in all schools statewide and to shift the determination on whether to require this to the local level." That was on a press release dated February 7th. The buck has officially been passed on to you. You have until February 28th to make a determination whether to require masks or to allow freedom, according to the information I had before I came this evening. At this time, there are just over a dozen states that have not ended student mask requirements, according to an article in Newsweek, also dated February 7th. I think that local officials are starting to understand that lawsuits related to compromised student physical and mental health outcomes, as well as staff OSHA violations, will now be dumped into their laps. And this is not something that most school districts can afford to take on. I wanted to share some information that was presented to a Texas school board in August of 2021. A father and his elementary school-aged daughter stood before their Board of Education. He spoke about his 15 years working in confined spaces through his construction job. He described how all people who do his work have to be equipped with an air quality monitor. It monitors oxygen, carbon monoxide, and multiple other gases. Before they go into a confined space, they have to drop the monitor into that space. If the monitor alarm goes off, the safety regulations will not allow them to enter this space. He further explained that when he was working in confined spaces, every employee had to wear this monitor. If the alarm goes off for any reason, all employees must drop their tools and immediately evacuate the area. He then checks the oxygen level of his unmasked daughter, and it reads 20.9 parts per million of oxygen. He further explains that if the oxygen level drops below 19.5, OSHA guidelines would require her to evacuate. Then he asks his daughter to put her mask on and then tests the level of oxygen under her mask. The monitor begins to sound an alarm. The father asked the Board of Education, "If OSHA regulations do not allow me to do my job with this level of oxygen, why are we forcing children for several hours every day to keep a mask on?" This was a moving and scary demonstration. According to OSHA, all oxygen-deficient atmospheres must be considered immediately dangerous to life or health. How would DCF respond to a complaint that you are providing an environment that was immediately dangerous to life or health? What about the respiratory impaired individuals? Can you provide a mandate that is safe for and follows OSHA guidelines? This seems like a bee's nest that you would not want to step on. There are more than 167 studies indicating that masks are ineffective and actually harmful, especially to children. I just got one more line. On the boxes of most masks, it states this product will not protect against COVID-19. We have been frightened into complying with this theater. We all know that masks don't work. Please give these decisions back to our parents. Thank you so much.
Desiree Boulay.
Desiree Boulette, 218 Brainerd Road, Enfield. Good evening. My name is Desiree, and I have 2 children that are enrolled in the Enfield Public School System. I would like to respectfully ask the members of the board and Superintendent Drezek to please end the school mask mandate. The decision to mask children should be left up to the parents. It is a gross overreach by school officials to continue with this mandate. Why are you infringing upon parental rights? I make the decisions for my children, not you. Masking has negatively impacted my 5- and 6-year-old. At their age, it is imperative for their social and emotional development to see facial expressions on their peers and teachers. My son is autistic and has a speech delay. How is he supposed to read emotions behind a covered face? We can go to restaurants, concerts, and attend sporting events without masks, yet we require them for school? Where is the logic in that? Why are we continuing to mask a population that is least likely to spread COVID? COVID isn't going anywhere. Are we supposed to mask our children for the rest of their school years? Please let the parents make the choice whether or not to mask. Thank you.
Sophia Arel.
Hello. Off. Am I good? Okay. Sophia Arel, 48 Weymouth School Road. I just want to say before I start that for the people at home that can't see, the kids did leave the room, just so you know. Consent is enthusiastic, fluid, respectful, and required. We can use pizza as a metaphor for sex. When you order a pizza with your friends, everyone checks in about each other's preferences, right? The same goes for sex. You have to check in with your partner and ask for their preferences. Your partner may be comfortable with one sexual activity but not another. Maybe your partner only wants to be touched a certain way, or maybe your partner prefers to use a certain language, or maybe they don't want sex at all. What's your favorite style of pizza? Favorite toppings? What are your no-nos? Now mirror these preferences in relation to sex. Here are some. Likes cheese equals kissing. Dislikes olives equals giving oral. I'm more of a don't knock it till you try it kind of girl, but I'm not a fan of anchovies. And anchovies for me equals anal sex. Okay, now let's talk about what I do like. No, I'm kidding, we'd be here all night. Does that make you feel uncomfortable? Does that make you cringe? Would you like to share your sexual preferences with a room full of people? Imagine how a 13-year-old kid would feel. It's inappropriate. Keep this garbage out of our schools and let kids be kids. And you made an apology to the teacher who made a mistake. But what about an apology to the student who received the assignments? Or the students, I should say. What about that? What a cowardly and weak response. Unmask our kids.
Marcy Talicio.
Marcy Talicio, 23 Coolidge. I think we all know I could take this in so many different directions, but I will start by saying, oh, Pastor, dear Pastor, if anybody in this room thinks that children in middle school are not exposed to this outside of the school or even inside of the school, in the lunchroom, in the bathroom, you're delusional. Kids are talking about sex at a very early age, much more so than I think you think they are. And making them aware of what it means is responsible. And that's what this school is doing. This particular assignment...
Please let her talk.
This particular assignment was obviously not appropriate, but it was not intended to cause harm to any child. And I think that it's absolutely ridiculous that it has gotten this far. For a grown woman to bring pizza in here to prove a point and grandstand, that's absolutely ridiculous. I do want to get back to talking about graduation rates. I want to talk about performance profiles. I want to know those things. I don't know what we're doing anymore, coming to these meetings and bringing in personal grievances that really have nothing to do with the success, the educational success of our students. That's why we're here. And that's what this board is here to do, is to make sure that in the long run, after the students and teachers and superintendent and everybody goes home at the end of the day safely and soundly, that we come out in the end with a product of a successful child. That's all we want. We want success for our children. And we need to have those conversations here at the Board of Education meetings. So we have to stop having conversations about things that really don't belong here. If you want to take it somewhere else, to the superintendent, to a teacher, go up the chain of command like you're supposed to, that would be fine. But grow up and stop grandstanding.
Okay, I might have a hard time just because of the way the first name is Steve, and is it McGoldrick? Okay, I'm sorry.
Steve McGoldrick, 12 Orchard Hill Drive. I signed up because I've been standing for 2 hours and I just wanted to sit for 3 minutes. So I don't have anything to say. No, I'm just joking. This is not a political speech. I've got a lot of things I could say. There's a lot of great things that people have said. I just want to take a moment. I want to thank all of you, Democrats, Republicans, everyone here, all the leaders. I think it's important that you know that your leadership is given to you by the town, the town taxpayers and the voters, but ultimately it's given to you by God as the authority that gives you the right to be where you are, and I commend you for the work that you do. And I just wanted to say thank you for the work that you do. I certainly don't agree with some of the things you do, and I certainly agree with some of the things you do as well. And I really appreciate the work that you do. And I just wanted to take a moment to just say a prayer, not political or anything like that. And I just want to thank you and thank God for you and pray for wisdom and the decisions that you make. So I just pray, Heavenly Father, that you pray for the superintendent and his office, the town council, the teachers, Mayor Corsati. We thank you for the leadership that you've instilled in all of them. We pray that you would give them wisdom and discernment. We pray that you would just be with them in the decisions they have to make, that they would look to you and honor you in their decisions. And we just pray for the wisdom in the members that are here today, the town taxpayers as well, that they would treat this with respect and that they would treat each other with respect, and that we would just continue to love them in the way of respect that we have for the town and for the authority that you give to them. So in all this, we ask you, amen. Thank you all.
Maureen Snook.
Good evening. We make a difference. We make a difference in Enfield. Every child.
You just have to state your name and address.
Oh, that's right. My
I didn't
apologies.
Start your time yet.
I'm sorry. Maureen Snook, 33 Buchanan Road. We make a difference in Enfield, every child, every day. That's typically the quote on the TV screen directly behind you. If that were to be true, what about every single child that was pulled from the Enfield public school systems this year alone? Over 100 students at the present time. When the superintendent was emailed with questions in regards to me pulling my children, I received no response. Just an email forwarded along. Where was the concern on my children being left behind? When the question arises, why are you here if you don't have kids in the school system? I can't speak for all, but in my case, it's because my two kids, 5 and 6, no longer enjoyed going to school with a mask covering their face. They didn't get to see their friends' smiles. The mask made them hot and tired. They couldn't breathe running around during gym. Even my son, who couldn't wait to start basketball this year, decided on November 2nd, when he found out about the indoor mask mandate, that he would wait till next year to play because, and I quote, "Mom, I hate wearing that thing during PE. You really think I want to wear one during basketball?" At that point, I realized I was not going to let the government officials co-parent with me. I, however, will continue to come before you as long as these tyrannical policies are in place, as you are failing my children with my dollar. Government officials at this point should not be mandating any medical provisions for this virus, as they have yet to provide one that actually stops the spread of it. mask mandates, vaccine mandates, only essential shopping open, plexiglass everywhere, 30-day quarantine, 2 weeks to stop the spread, none of which have been successful. Stand for freedom of choice. Allow parents to make the best decision for their children based on all the medical advice that we have received over the past 2 years, and let's learn to live with this virus rather than be scared of it. Unmask our kids. Thank you.
Robert Kwasnicki.
Good evening, Robert Kwasnicki, 123 Wynwood Drive with a Y. So I just want to start out saying that I was a little disappointed with the pizza thing, but I was doubly disappointed that I couldn't grab a piece. I'm really hungry, and just want to state that for the record. I'm here as was mentioned, a government official, just like all of you. I sit on a commission. I have been elected, even though it's a lowly position. But I'm standing here in support of the parents wanting to get rid of the mask mandate. And I would like to suggest to this board that we don't wait for the governor. Pass a decree, get rid of it, make it optional. What's going to happen? The governor is going to send his attorneys and make them send you a nasty legal letter. Our attorney is going to respond back and forth, back and forth. The 28th comes up and it's done. Give these kids a break. Just take a leadership position and give these kids a break. Now, I want to make a quick statement on leadership. Just in general, I used to manage 50 and 20 people. Mistakes definitely happen. And those are accidental or on purpose, it didn't matter. One thing I look for is accountability from that person to take ownership of that error. The second thing I demanded was for them to come to me and tell me, how is this not going to happen again in the future? And the apology comes from me to the people that were wronged. I didn't pass the buck down the chain. It stopped with me. And I think the temperature in this room could come down a little bit if we took some ownership from a leadership position and then said, I will get an answer and we'll stop this in the future from going on. Because frankly, I've heard nothing that's going to prevent anything coming down like this in the future. Now, the last thing about the mask thing, you know, I'm not going to go there. I appreciate you guys serving. I know how hard it is to get elected. I will remind you that the only difference between you all, myself, the governor, and those folks sitting behind me is that we all won a popularity contest. When we won that popularity contest, God did not devote some magical powers of reasoning or prudence upon us. I would really ask that we respect those parents that do want to opt out of this mask mandate. Let our kids breathe. Let them socialize. It's really appalling. And I'll leave it at that. And I appreciate you guys' service. I hope we can find a way to unify people. It's really important because this is divisive. This is not healthy, and we need to come together. But please consider passing a resolution to end the mandate ASAP. Let the lawyers fight it out, and before you know it, it's all over anyway. Thank you very much.
Colleen Dabkowski. Is there a Colleen Dabkowski?
The officer said, well, I don't want to speak with you, but he said to skip it. She's out here.
Genesis Alfonso?
Genesis Alfonso, 1776 Liberty Street. It's a pretty nice little talent show they did at the school I hear with the pizza thing. I don't think that's a part of the governor's mandates or anything that he has to do with. So I'm pretty sure you guys are going to be able to take a good handle of it and make sure that it doesn't happen again. And it's absolutely inappropriate. I don't care if they're doing it and if they're talking about it in the bathrooms, in the library, wherever. it's not the teacher's responsibility to bring in outside content. This is not a part of their education, and they're minors. This is inappropriate. The masking, it's up to you guys now to do what's right. In the future, you're all going to be responsible, and their blood is going to be on your hands for what harms are being done socially and mentally to these kids, whether you decide to keep masking them or not. And that's all I have.
Okay, I'm going to declare public comment closed. We're going to move on to board member comments, and we're going to start tonight with Mr. Ungary.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So a gentleman spoke here tonight, and I think it's Jonathan Grande. I hope I got it right. First, I want to say thank you to all the teachers who came here this evening. Very much appreciate everything that our teachers do and all the hard work that they do and the love that they show our kids and the passion that they have for their profession, and just wholeheartedly respect our teachers, and we're so very thankful, and we are privileged to have the teachers that we do have in this great town that we live in. So going back to Jonathan here, because he touched on something that's very close to me, and that is talking about manufacturing, and you're mentioning turnbacks and escapes and things like that. So I come from an aerospace manufacturing background, and to prevent aircraft from falling out of the sky, all of us fly and we want to be safe, we cannot afford mistakes. And so anytime a mistake happens, all that, albeit a plane coming down or a part on a plane breaking, immediately there's something done called, and he touched on it, it's called a RCCA, a root cause corrective action process. Okay? This is where we find out how what happened, and many times it's not as obvious as you think. And I could give you multiple examples of that, but the reality is what appears to be the cause of something is not always really what the root cause of that is. So it's important to go back and determine what the root cause is. And then once you find out the root cause, then you put into place procedures and safeguards from preventing it from happening again. Now, I remember, I guess it was back in late October, when there was a lesson that came out. It was a wheel-shaped thing, a social justice kind of lesson that many parents found to be objectionable. And many of them complained to the superintendent. And at the next board meeting, I recall that the superintendent addressed that. He addressed that lesson specifically. And I'm going to kind of summarize what he said, because I found it to be somewhat concerning, okay? Concerning to me and to all the members of this board, I'm sure, which is essentially, I'm going to summarize this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I got out of it was, it's not my fault, board, it's your fault, because you're the ones who control policy, you're the ones who are responsible for this, and basically we tried to take it to policy and see, well, what could we do in policy to try to make it better? So now this pizza thing comes out, and
Madam Chair, I did not say that, so
I was summarizing, but in
yeah,
essence,
summarize it more. I never said it's not my fault, it's your fault. So I just want to make sure that's noted in the record.
Please be quiet in the audience, please. We were quiet when you guys spoke.
Okay. And I don't mean that that's something wrong to say. It's just I thought that's how you framed it. And if I'm incorrect, I'll go back and rewatch it, and then we can discuss it again. So with that said, Then all of a sudden now, the first thing comes out and it's oops. And then now the pizza thing comes out and it's again, how did this happen? And what can we do to prevent it from happening again? Okay. Now, I'm not saying it's good or it's bad. I'm saying that there's parents that are upset, and these escapes, these releases, have caused a great deal of concern, a great deal of parental concern, obviously. In the wake of this, there's been then kids who have, felt uncomfortable. I heard where, kids were staring at their plates at dinner time, saying that they were uncomfortable about the lessons that they had received from school. I understood that there were teachers who presented these lessons that were uncomfortable with that. So what can we do? What can we do as a board, this board here, to get to the root cause, examine the process, get to the root cause, and then see what we can do to implement corrective actions so that these kinds of escapes don't happen again without parental consent or knowledge of parents of what's going to be taught to their kids. And that we do have a policy in the bylaws of the board for the formation of special committees, temporary committees, and ad hoc committees. So, Madam Chairman, I am calling upon you and this board that we form a special committee, essentially I'm going to call it a parental task force, okay? A committee that will include, and it will be a bipartisan committee, okay? That will include parents, that will include members of this board as liaisons. That could include the assistant superintendent, a policy director, a curriculum director, and then get to the root cause, find out how this is happening, and what can we do to prevent it from happening again, and put procedures in place so that people can be made aware of lessons like this, perhaps like this again, that may come out, and it will be no surprise. And I know that there are permission sheets that are given out many times on particular lessons that parents must sign to say, okay, I will allow my student to partake in this particular lesson. So we could, as a board, do that out of consideration for the many, many parents that spoke here and who are concerned about the well-being of their kids and the quality of education that they're receiving in this good town. I think we as a board would be very responsible in consideration of them in forming a committee that would include them, because this is the Enfield Public Schools. It's not the Enfield Government Schools. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that committee. I'd like to see that committee include these parents, include the board, include some of our administration, and let's get to the root cause. Thank you.
Ms. Acree?
Good evening, everyone. On a positive note, I just would like to report a concert that I attended. On Monday, January 24th, I had the privilege of attending the JFK Middle School Choral Concert. I was very, very impressed with the musical performance of our students. Their voices were harmonious and very sweet. And to me, there's nothing like the sound of children's singing voices. I truly enjoyed and appreciated the concert because I was a choral music teacher for 40 years myself. It was also a very special concert because it was the first performance in the newly renovated auditorium. Kudos to the musical director of JFK, Kimberly Jakes, I hope I'm saying it properly, and also her accompanist, Michael Stewart. Congrats to all the students who performed. And I would also like to thank Mr. Delaney, a teacher at JFK, when you spoke about the challenges tonight that's facing the teachers, because I was a teacher for 40 years, I do understand, but also the challenges of the board. I liked your attitude. I thought it was a great attitude, wanting to be the best at your profession, because that is important, because we know the old cliche of the children are our future. But I also want to give kudos to the other teachers too, like Ms. McGuire, who spoke tonight, and all the other teachers who are very dedicated to our Enfield Public School students. Thank you.
Ms. Cushman?
One thing that has caused me to ponder from a lot of things that have been happening is whether it's unintentional or intentional, that we recognize that our students are going to encounter things on the internet that we wish they would never have seen. And it has led me to think a lot about internet safety. There was an event that was hosted at Asnuntuck Community College back in 2018 on human trafficking awareness, and it was for our community. And one of the liaisons for DCF was sharing a statistic that I found rather alarming. That their statistic for here in Connecticut was that the majority of children being trafficked are children that are living at home with one or both of their parents. And it's not that they're being trafficked by their parents, it's that the parents don't recognize the signs of trafficking. And so it becomes something that is happening in a safe place in the home where the child is connecting, because it's undoubtedly always due to the internet. That's the new place where kids meet exploiters. And so it had me thinking about that statistic, but also thinking about now with the pandemic, iPads were a great tool. They were a tool that we used in order to be able to bring our instruction home when the schools were closed. But yet, now we have students that never, under any other circumstances, might have young students that might have this technology. And what are we doing to protect them? We're seeing, if that was in 2018, where it was over 50% of our students, of children being trafficked, were living at home, how under the pandemic conditions, how much more so when kids are so much more online for school, for socialization, for entertainment, how much more so could those statistics have rose? That now exploiters use the internet to reach children. And in the church community that I'm a part of, we did have a student through YouTube connected with someone who exploited them, was able to manipulate them and get their information, knew where they lived. And these are things that I think are alarming for all of us. I did have an opportunity last year to talk with Mr. Drezik about hosting an event for our families here to better equip them with knowing how to handle technology in the home and knowing how to find and recognize the signs of trafficking in their own children. And I know a lot of the COVID, everything with all the mandates and things made it difficult for us to host such an event in person. But I'm hoping that as things are with fewer mandates, that I'm hoping that we can revisit the possibility of hosting such an event again soon. On a lighter note, I just have connected with recently the Enfield First Readers Association. They held their first meeting on Zoom on January 12th, the first meeting of the year, I should say. First Readers is a unique town-wide program that recognizes and celebrates a key milestone in our children, in our students, and that's becoming a reader. There is a drive-through celebration ceremony that's planned for May 23rd at Asnuntuck Community College, where our first readers will receive a first reader certificate, medal, and a t-shirt. As always, in any kind of event like this, volunteers are needed. If you're interested in being part of the recognition and celebration of Enfield's first readers, you can check out their Facebook page, or you can reach out to me, or I know Jonathan's part of it as well. The next meeting for first readers is planned for Wednesday, February 23rd at 5 p.m. via Zoom. So, thank you.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Good evening, guys. Well, Superintendent, we may not have student speakers until next meeting, but it was cool to see two tonight at least who came out, and I think that's between them two. I know another student previously in the past, back in the fall, came out, so in this term for 3 students to come up here and talk is pretty impressive, and it shows that they're engaged in what's going on in society and want to partake in it. So I applaud those 2 girls who came up tonight and talked. Mask. The end is in sight. So I know it's finally there, right? We've been talking, you've been coming to all the meetings, right? And I'll even I was the one who said, right, when it's our decision, right, then you can come and, talk to us. And now, right, it's there. You can see it, right? This might be put on the boards of education, superintendent. We'll see where it goes. The good news is whether it's not going to be tomorrow, whether it's the 15th, 28th, March, whenever it may be, the end is in sight, okay? I strongly think that before the school year is done, there is no more mask in school. So I think, if we can just, all right, over the next couple days, next week or 2, and see where this goes. And I think we'll be happy with the answers we get from our governor, maybe from our superintendent. But let's hold tight and see where it goes before we hit the panic button again. Secondly, pizza assignment. Big mistake, okay? Everybody can recognize that, okay? What's even a bigger mistake is going online, okay, and bashing our teachers, all right? It's inappropriate and it's uncalled for. I think, as the superintendent stated in his report, the individual who was responsible is apologized countless times, right? And I know the assignment can't be taken back, but the mistake was recognized. That's a starting point, all right? Okay? I'm not on the forum. I don't want to be on the forum, but a lot of our community members are. And when I heard, and actually I'm on Facebook, so I know it kind of creeps out. You're not really a member of the forum, but you know what goes on in the forum even if you're not on the forum, right? Because it kind of creeps out through your friends and whatnot. I was really disappointed in some of those comments from our community members. Really disappointed. That's not the town I know. When I see hundreds of comments bashing our teachers, not cool. Not cool whatsoever, okay? All right? I know that we all have our opinions on stuff, but Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, I don't care what it is, it's not the place to go there and take misconstrued information and put your own personal opinion on it. Because here's what happens. Out of those hundreds of comments that were generated, right, on a post or a topic, right, everybody starts commenting their opinion on it, right? And then I comment. Next person reads it. They read my comment. Now, what do they know about the assignment? They know what my comment was. What's my comment? My comment's not the assignment. My comment's my personal opinion on the assignment. I take that information, and now I'm basing my opinion off that opinion. And it's opinion after opinion after opinion after opinion, and it all gets lost. And that's the problem, right? And for it to get to the point where opinions turned into opinions to the point where we're calling our teachers, I'm not going to repeat what the superintendent said, but words such as what a staff member was called, it's disgusting. Because that wasn't the intent, and I promise you, nobody in our school system is the word he used. So I was really disappointed in that, and I hope that that can be taken back, and we can have our opinions, have our debates on the forum. I still won't know what they are. I'm not going to go on there, but understand words can hurt. All right, so I want to clarify that. Another issue I want to go on is the superintendent, his assistant superintendent, even Kathy for that matter, and the 40 teachers in this room. Well, maybe not 40, but there's a lot, and they're well represented tonight. Without them, we would be crap out of luck as a school system. Okay, he's in a position. He's a superintendent. He can take heat, and he deserves heat when the time comes. All right, but what I do know is that without him, this entire board and this entire town, our entire school system would be in shambles. I know from personal experience, I work in other school systems. I have previous experience in other school systems. They're good school systems, don't get me wrong, but they're not Enfield. And every time I come home from work and I come to a Board of Education meeting and I come to, you know, this opinion, this opinion or that opinion, I come to these meetings, the only thing that keeps it encouraging is that we have a stronger school system than anywhere, I'll say in Connecticut, but in New England, for that matter, okay? So I just want people to understand that, and I know it's hard to look outside the broader horizon because we are in Enfield and you're worried about the Enfield school system, and I get it. But I'm letting you know there are school systems out there that don't function the way we do, right? And it's not the best picture, right? What we have going on in Enfield is light years ahead of anywhere else. So I really want the community to understand and appreciate that. Sure, we can have our debates. Sure, there are mistakes made. I don't always agree with him. Most of the time, maybe I don't agree with him, right? But here's the thing. I got to look at the bigger picture, okay? And the bigger picture is we have a leader with him, with the assistant superintendent, with that whole administration down the street, and at every single school throughout this district that put in their time and effort every single day for every one of these kids in town. And I can't thank you guys enough. And keep doing what you're doing. The issues, I think, in time will start to take care of themselves, especially the mask issue ongoing. But what you guys do is, I see it, and I know these members also in this council chamber and around town also see it too. So I want that to be put out. That goes to them. That goes to the teachers in the audience. Take that back to your schools. We appreciate it. Thank you. Lastly, I just wanted to end with a quote because it was put out. I think there's like I've seen it on Facebook a lot. I correct me if I'm wrong. I hurt my Connecticut public schools or something like that, right? Hashtag. I want to end with this quote: "Out of the public schools grows the greatness of a nation." Mark Twain. Okay, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Mr. Hamry?
Thank you, Chair. So, I wrote something earlier this evening, and it echoes a lot of what Jonathan just said, so I'm not going to really get too far into what I wrote. But I did write about a way that I want to ask you to consider the approach that we take to addressing our schools, the administration, not necessarily this board. Treat us as you're going to treat us. I'm not going to ask for any special treatments at all. But for the purposes of our educators and everybody that on the front lines and behind the lines for the students, consider for a minute the analogy of those being teachers that are teaching our children to swim. They have a responsibility to introduce them to the water and get them comfortable with the process of being in a pool. And at one point, they go further into the pool with the students to further that education, if you will. This is the analogy building to their education. And as they get deeper into the pool where the teacher can no longer touch the floor of the pool, they have to tread the water while still teaching the students how to swim, keeping them afloat while they learn their way in the pool. Consider for a minute then what they've had to go through, and that's just under regular circumstances, the analogy of teaching in general. Consider for a minute then what those teachers have had to do over the last 2 years of this pandemic response. They've been shackled by the COVID response, the measurements taken to protect and keep safe their students, and each other for that matter. They've been limited to the amount of water that they can tread in because of the restrictions and limitations and virtual learnings and all that goes along with the hybrid model. And situations that come up, as have been discussed earlier this evening, do nothing more than throw chains around those instructors, around those teachers trying to keep the children afloat. And the children will suffer from that as much as the teachers will. The teachers will need to get out of the pool at some point for their own survival. It's just a matter of how long they can tread the water with all the additional weight that they're bearing. I don't wish that on anybody. I don't know why anybody would. I would ask that the actions be taken to consider the impact that it's having on the instructors, on those frontline teachers, on the administration, on the people responsible for providing the best education that Mr. LeBlanc mentioned they are receiving in this district, and that they are afforded the opportunity to pursue their profession, to achieve their vocation as they've imagined it. Nobody gets into this vocation because they want the money and the fame. Thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate that. They do not do this for the money. They do it because they want their children, their students, their charges to be successful in their education. And as such, they deserve the support. And I trust the administration for the process that is in place when things don't go as planned. Now, to that point, I've learned a lot after the fact. I have. I knew nothing of what I spoke of when we had our virtual meeting until after the fact. Shame on me for not having that awareness that was out there in the Facebook realm. I don't apologize for what I said because I stick to that. I trust our administration and I trust the processes when things don't go right. Those processes are in place. We are the last line in the disciplinary process for this district. We do not have any knowledge of these things until they come to us through the proper channels, until something comes up like this where it just explodes. So again, I make no apologies for my response at that time. I did not know about the situation at that time, and I do appreciate the efforts to bring it to my attention. I'm better for it. I thank you very much for your time on that topic. JFK has a newsletter that goes out. It's available online. And to Mr. Ryder's credit, again, keeping that Enfield PTO updated, you can get to this newsletter through the JFK, through the Enfield PTO website. And Dr. Berrios has a really good piece on internet safety, to Ms. Cushman's concerns earlier, not quite, but he makes a good plea for the awareness that goes into being online and that social, I'm going to get the phrase wrong, but that digital identity, correct me on that phrase if I can, but it ties into that, and it's worth reading what Dr. Berrios has to say about that. To that point, JFK's got a PTO meeting tomorrow night, virtual, looking to learn more about what's going on over there and bring any of these concerns or receive any of the concerns at that time. Thank you.
Dr. Calnan?
Thank you. I want to talk briefly about two really exciting developments, but before I do that, I just wanted to very quickly go over some kite events that the audience ought to be aware of. Stowe's Pop the Trunk Grab and Learn event is next week at Stowe on Thursday, February 17th from 7:30 to 10:30 a.m. and again from 3:30 to 6:30 p.m. The Parent Leadership Academy will be closing applications soon, but there's still time to enroll. Stowe's next family educator organization meeting is February 15th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. And finally, the monthly Kite Collaborative meeting is Wednesday, March 2nd, and all are welcome. So what I would like to do tonight is to talk briefly about two very exciting developments. The first is what's called 2Gen, the 2Gen initiative. Most parents want to be the best that they can possibly be, but when they don't know where they'll be living next month, or whether they'll need to decide between paying for groceries or paying medical bills, such problems can make it very, very difficult to be an ideal parent. So these everyday crises that too many families face, the so-called adverse social determinants of health, can have a really profoundly detrimental effect on parent-child relationships. Especially for very young children, such damage can result in serious long-term and even lifelong harm, both physical and mental. No one person or organization can successfully address these social determinants of health alone. It requires a community effort. And this is where 2Gen can help. Now, 2Gen is an initiative that's sponsored, I believe it's sponsored by United Way. At least that was my impression when I attended the first meeting, but I can't find documentation to that. But that is my belief. It started at United Way to bring community partners together to identify and address these obstacles to family wellness and to find solutions. So Kite has taken on the task of bringing 2Gen to Enfield. It's ideally positioned to do so. Kite has had a lot of experience bringing community resources to the table. You need look no further than the One Community Project for the proof. So Kite has formed a steering committee to address the most salient challenges besetting Enfield families. Members of this committee include early childhood providers, adult education professionals, the Asnuntuck Community College leadership, Enfield Food Shelf, medical professionals, mental health providers, employment program functionaries, and many others. Probably the most daunting challenge facing the steering committee is addressing the problem of affordable, high-quality childcare. This is, any family in Enfield will attest, this is no small issue. Many children spend a large share of their waking hours, perhaps most of their waking hours, in childcare, making it imperative that their child care providers are of the highest caliber. Such care shouldn't break the bank for these families. 2Gen may not be able and probably won't be able to solve this problem on its own. Ultimately, the solution may require government assistance at the local, state, and national level. But one thing is clear. One thing is very certain. Solving the problem must start with the community. 2Gen can make that happen in Enfield. So that was the first initiative I wanted to talk to you about. The second is something called Circle of Security. As you probably will become aware, this Board of Education is prepared to rededicate itself to ensuring the mental health and welfare of all of our students. Mental health care involves more than crisis management. It also involves intervention to prevent behavioral challenges from becoming full-blown mental health disorders. And that's what Circle of Security is designed to do. A circle of security creates a space for parents experiencing significant challenges in their relationships with their children to talk with other parents with similar issues under the guidance of a facilitator trained in the circle of security attachment framework. The same cohort of parents meet on a regular basis with the facilitator over the course of 8 to 10 sessions. It's not simply a parent support group. It's actually so much more than that. Circle of Security has a strong evidence base. A Circle of Security program has been operational at the Enfield Family Resource Centers, as well as 2 Enfield pediatric practices, with perhaps a third on the way. Another pediatric practice in Rocky Hill has also been running a Circle of Security program, and at least one school system in Connecticut has been using a Circle of Security. According to the Surgeon General and the American Academy of Pediatrics, the United States is now experiencing a childhood mental health epidemic. Circle of Security in our school system could offer a modest but effective strategy for combating it. Now, I want to emphasize that Circle of Security has not yet been approved by this Board of Education. Indeed, this is the first presentation made in this forum to date. I had an opportunity to brainstorm a little with Cynthia Guerreri, the Director of Enfield Social Services, and Amy Morales, the Operations Manager for the Enfield Child, Youth, and Family Division, about the possibility of a pilot program in the Enfield public school system. At the present moment, this is just an idea. I really want to emphasize that. This is just an idea in development, but it's an idea worth pursuing. And it's also very important to stress that Circle of Security is not psychotherapy. It's designed to help parents understand problematic childhood behavior in the context of relational challenges so that parenting can become an even more rewarding experience and so that the child can feel supported in her efforts to thrive and to delight in the discovery of the world around her, knowing that a parent is always there to welcome her back whenever a safe haven is required. Thank you.
Ms. Pickett?
Thank you. So first, I want to thank you, Chris. Sorry, I'm getting a feedback phone sound, and it's really... never mind. I'll just work through it. Chris, I really appreciate you taking the time to explain process and demonstrating your leadership of empathy and trust. I really appreciate that more than I can express, taking the time as long as, and kind of frustrating as it is to talk about masks, I really appreciated you taking the time to break that down. Teachers, Charlie and Emily, thank you for reminding me why I signed up to run. It has been a very trying few months, and I appreciate you coming out tonight and reminding me exactly why I selected to run for the Board of Ed. So a little over a year ago was my first time that I attended an in-person Board of Ed meeting as a parent of a kindergartner. I believe at the time I was one of 4 audience members in the room. So I'm not there tonight, but I do not believe that's what was happening there tonight in the room. And I'm actually really excited to see folks coming out and speaking. But for 8 months, I watched from home because it was during the pandemic and there was no public comment. So I understand the frustration and the importance and how necessary it is for families, students, and staff to have voice and provide feedback and decision making. I ran on this, and I promise you all that I'm an advocate for partnership and collaboration in my role. I support public education. I believe in the leadership, staff, students, and the community to do this work. We are driven by a common ground, so I think one of the teachers spoke about that, which is our mission. And that states that we support every student every day. And I actually think we expand that. I'd like to see us support every staff member and every family member in our community every day. I understand that Enfield Public School is not perfect, that we have work to do. But if we come with that common understanding and a willingness to be solution focused, I believe that we can do great work here. So something that hasn't been spoken of that I want to make sure is in the space tonight is that it is Black History Month. This is a great reminder of how we can be more intentional about how we honor, acknowledge, and celebrate the contributions of people of color in our community, in our state, in our nation, and in our world. Each year, a theme is chosen, and this year's theme is of Black health and wellness. I encourage families, students, and staff to check out the National Museum of African American History and Culture. They have an entire website dedicated to this special month with resources and things you can check out. Some school updates. Sorry, Scott, I hope I don't steal all your thunder. Valentine's Day and 100 Day is coming up. So for Enfield Street School, I encourage everybody to check with your classroom teacher, but I do believe students will be allowed to bring in cards, pencils, erasers, non-edible treats for their classmates for Valentine's Day. 100 Day is coming up on the 16th. I know there's some fun challenges coming home. My little guy was working on a secret 100 Day item with clues. PTO updates. We are working on a staff pick-me-up. We love you, teachers and staff and office and custodial and everybody at the school. So we are working on a challenge for staff to nominate their colleagues for raffle prizes. So families who want to contribute to raffle prizes, please reach out to the PTO. There's lots of fundraising coming up, and the next meeting is tomorrow at 6 p.m. On Zoom. Parkman. I want to thank Bridget, my PTO liaison. She keeps me up to date what's going on at Parkman all the time. So they met on January 13th. Again, lots of fundraising going on there, and their next meeting is tomorrow at 6 p.m. as well at the Parkman Library. This week, they are asking students to make Valentine's Day cards for the residents at St. Joseph's. The PTO did provide cards and decorations, and will deliver those on Friday. I know Dr. Calnan does a great job updating about Stowe, but that still plays a special place in my heart. So they do have a new Flipgrid for the 100 Day, where we have some students from Hazardville Memorial School reading a book. So I encourage families to take a video and post on Flipgrid. And the application for Stowe is live for next year. So I encourage any family who has preschool age children to apply to the Stowe programs. I can't say what a blessing Stowe is in our community. Josh, you reminded me about swim. I'm going to give a shout out to the Dolphin swim team who had their championship this past weekend. Seeing the staff, come up and speak tonight reminds me that not only do they teach our kids, all day, many of them also coach, support our students in the community in many ways. So shout out to the staff who also support our students outside of the school building in recreational activities. This might seem like a silly update, but I think it's something very important to address. I've had a few families reach out to me regarding lunch options. So first I want to say that I can't thank the staff that feed our students, all of them, and which is a difference through COVID. Now we have to provide meals for every student in our building, and they do so much more for our community. So my mom was a lunch lady when I was in school, so I know how important her role was to the school community. So with that being said, I know there's been some concerns raised over lunch offerings and things going on. I want folks to know that the supply issue is true and is impacting what we're able to offer. We are also still delivering lunches to classrooms, so that places a huge burden on staff and also a burden on what we can actually provide to students. But I did notice a new lunch menu starting this week. So I was excited to see some additional and different lunch items. I encourage families to check out the new lunch menu. Honestly, I can't complain, but because both of my children eat breakfast and lunch at school every day. So I have no complaints, but I just wanted to let folks know that there are some updates with the lunch menu. And the last piece, which I was not going to speak to, but I think it's important when we talk about root cause, I think we need to understand what the concerns are at the table. And a lot of what I was hearing as concerns around the lessons being taught was around the content of the lesson. And that content of the lesson, we can get down to that root cause. And that comes from standards and from legislation around health education. And I addressed that last meeting. So when we talk about root cause of the content of the lesson, that ties back to standards and state law around health education in class, which is always optional and parents consent to. I am in favor of family voice around the table, but I think the process for how we gather families and perspectives shouldn't be solely focused on one issue at play. That's all I have for tonight.
Mr. Ryder?
Okay, I have some updates from our schools and our PTOs. Henry Barnard and Prudence Crandall, their PTO meeting is this week on February 10th. Henry Barnard and Prudence Crandall are both doing a spiritware sale. I saw some previews posted on both schools' Facebook families pages, and I'm going to ask for the links from the PTOs there, so you'll also see it on enfieldpto.com/Henry Barnard or enfieldpto.com/Crandall. Very soon. Also, Hazardville Memorial School Spiritware is still open but closes this week on the 11th. They're having a Spirit Week next week, and it is the same as Eli Whitney. So when I read off Eli Whitney's Spirit Week, just know that the sister school Hazardville is also participating. They also have a virtual bingo coming up on Teams this week at 6:30 on the 10th, which is 2 days from now. I also want to thank the teachers. As everybody knows, I spend more time in our buildings in the 10 years that I've lived here, probably than anybody. I've either run PTOs or vice presidented at every school my kids have been to. And I'm proud of the relationship I have both professionally and personally with our staff. And I think that they know that. Very, very proud of the friendships that I have with our staff. And I appreciate everything that they do for our kids, my two included. So updates for Eli Whitney, and I want to thank the school for sending this along to me. So for the month of February, Eli Whitney has challenged their sister school, Hazardville Memorial, to a food drive challenge to see who can fill up the Enfield food shelf boat the best. Classes are earning points for every item donated. So again, if you go to Eli Whitney or Hazardville, please keep in mind that for every cereal box you donate, your classroom gets 5 points. 1 point for all other non-perishable food items. That is because the Enfield food shelf is in dire need of cereals for our families in need. So that's worth 5 points. That'll go on throughout the month of February. And I encourage both schools to win so that they will be inspired to beat each other, and by doing so, raises a lot of food for families in need, especially in wintertime. Last week, Eli Whitney celebrated 22 by wearing ties, tutus, and tiaras, including our staff, and we have some pictures of that on enfieldpto.com in the Eli Whitney newsletter from Friday. We, at the school recently at Eli Whitney, they invited Loaves and Fishes to come to their last professional development day. And the staff made a donation. The staff at Eli Whitney, the teachers, made a donation of $200 to their organization. And I wanted to thank the Eli Whitney teachers for doing so. This Friday, the 4th and 5th graders will be attending a presentation from Sky Dome Planetarium. This Friday is also Sports Day at Eli Whitney, and I believe also at Hazardville. Because of the Super Bowl this weekend, students are encouraged to wear their favorite sports team's jersey or a current team or sport they may play on here at Enfield. And if sport is not your jam, your favorite color, it always works. There is Spiritware at both Hazardville and Eli Whitney sister schools next week, and both are posted on enfieldpto.com/HMS and /Eli Whitney. But Monday's theme is Valentine's Day. Because it's Valentine's Day. So Valentine's Day, because that's a Monday. So you can wear red or pink or hearts, or again, if that's not your favorite color, wear your favorite color. So that's what you love. Tuesday is tie-dye day. Wednesday is Wear It Wednesday, dress to impress. They're encouraging ties and tiaras. Again, it looks like 2222. And on Thursday, it is Thank You Thursday. Wear your school colors or school apparel, depending on your grade level. Also, Tuesday is Silly Sock Day at Whitney, but tie-dye day at Hazardville. So they're not exactly the same every day. But Wednesday is Dress Like You're 100 years old for the 100th day of school. Somebody mentioned the 100th day of school yet? Do I have a bingo? I have a bingo on that one. Also, Thursday at Eli Whitney is PJs for Paws. So you can bring in an optional $1 donation, which will be donated to the Enfield Police Department's K-9 unit. Because Huskies and police dogs canines.
Yes.
Both. Yeah. Is this thing on? And finally, at Eli Whitney on Tuesday, February 22nd, Eli Whitney will be hosting a Red Cross blood drive from 1 to 6 p.m. If you're interested in donating blood at this event, please visit the American Red Cross website at redcrossblood.org and use the code BGLAW to support donations for Enfield Public Schools, staff members, children. This blood drive is in honor of the children of a current Enfield Public School staff member. We're also looking for volunteers to help out between 3 and 6 p.m. So if you're available to volunteer or to donate and you have any questions, please reach out to Eli Whitney. Again, thank you to our staff. And that concludes the PTO report.
Mr. Ungar, you wanted to add one thing about Hazardville Memorial?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to add this one thing. I had the opportunity to visit Hazardville Memorial School. I'm the liaison to Hazardville Memorial, so I used that as an opportunity to meet with the principal and the vice principal, Principal Lisa Hunter. What a wonderful woman. And the vice principal, Andrew Dupere. So they gave me a tour of the school. I got to see the 7 kindergarten classes, the 6 first grade classes, and the 6 second grade classes, and saw them parading the kids all through the school. And, little waves here, and they got little waves back. Unfortunately, I couldn't see them smile. I would have loved to see them smile back. But I know. But apart from the academics, the basic academics, the one thing I did see at the school was that they focused on kindness, which I thought was really interesting. They focused on kindness. When a student does something kind, they recognize that student. They announce that student's name every morning over the loudspeaker because they did something kind. And they say something kind or they do treat somebody kind, they recognize that and they reinforce that with, they positively reinforce that. So I thought that was fantastic. So, you mentioned the 100 days. They've got a billboard up there, and they mark off every day, and they're coming up to the 100 days, and that's a big celebration. So I said, so if I went back 100 days from today, that means that would be the first day that they started school this year, and they said, yes, exactly. So I understood that. Pause time. I thought it was P-A-U-S-E. No. P-A-W-S, pause time. Scott mentioned pause. I know that they intermix the classes there on Fridays. So you got first graders with second graders, kindergarten kids with first graders, and they do that so that the kids can get to know some of the other kids in the school that they're not with, and they can also get to know some of the teachers that they'll be having in the future there at the school. So it really helps to socialize the kids with other kids. It was a wonderful experience, and I was really proud of how well the school is managed with Lisa and Andrew, Ms. Hunter and Mr. Dupere. Great job, and thank you for your time in showing me around.
I'm going to keep my time rather brief because we have some other things to talk about, and we're going to need to make a motion to go past 10:30. When do we need to make that motion by? All right. So I'll be brief, right? I have a few things. I just have some, housekeeping stuff. SafeGrad is still fundraising for the Sunny's Place event on graduation night. It's a drug-free, alcohol-free event for graduating seniors. They're selling these amazing coupon books, and there's also a Galentine's Day virtual purse bingo this Saturday. If you're interested in any of these, you can reach out to me, and I can get you all set with that. I wanted to mention there is an exciting thing going on at Enfield High tomorrow night. And they're calling it a town-wide event. And I just got to get my information. So it's called a Blackout, and it says all Enfield youth basketball players are invited to the Enfield High School girls basketball game versus Southington High School on 2/9/22. Game times are JV at 5:15 and varsity at 6:45. All girls basketball players grades 3 through 8 will have the opportunity to have a meet and greet with the 3 girls captains, Megan, Amaya, and Alyssa, at the start of the third quarter of the JV game. Everyone attending the game, please wear black colored clothing or your rec travel tops to help fill the Eagle stands. Both sides of the gym will be open for fans. Tell all of your friends and family members to come out and have a fun night supporting our high school Eagles. I love it that they're reaching out. The high school kids are reaching out to the younger kids. The younger kids absolutely love that. So I wanted to talk about that. The other thing, it is National School Counseling Week. And I think that's amazing. Kudos to our school counselors, guidance counselors. They have a lot they've had to deal with during COVID, and they're going to have to deal with a lot over the next couple of years as we're seeing the effects that COVID has had on not even just the students themselves, but the families. And I know we have great guidance counselors that go that extra mile and care about the families too. So kudos to all our guidance counselors. Sometimes you may feel like you're the unsung heroes, but we know you're there and you're keeping everybody going. So we appreciate you. One of the things I wanted to mention tonight too is both Ms. Acree and Dr. Kalman have been asking me, Mr. Drezek, about the Joint Mental Health Committee. It seems like with the shift in town leadership, we're not really getting a clear directive, and both of them would like to get that committee going or find out information as to how we could get it going. And so we just need a little bit of information on that. It seems like we're all reaching some dead ends, and if it's kind of reforming the committee, I think that's something that Ms. Acree and Dr. Kalman would like to be a part of going forward. So if we could do that, I would appreciate that. I'll mention this last thing. We talked about digital citizenship in our curriculum meeting about, like cyberbullying and what we're teaching the kids. And I found it really interesting. And I just wanted to share with everybody this tidbit. Guy Barassa, the guy you hear on the phone that closes our schools, he used to be a tech teacher, and he came to PTO meetings back when the internet was just starting. I know, crazy. It seems like it's been around forever. And he did like internet safety courses for the students or for the parents actually, because it was like the kids were just starting. And he had kind of made a really great analogy about the internet. He had said, would you put your 10-year-old on a plane and just send them out around the world? And of course everybody's like, no, we would never do that. And he goes, that's what you're doing with the internet. And, practicing digital citizenship, I think, what we've seen this week, I think we all need a course in it. And with that being said, I just wanted to mention that. Lastly, I really appreciate the teachers that came out tonight in support. We support you. We hear you. And we're so lucky to have all of you in our school district, because you guys are what makes our school district amazing, along with our students. So I thank you. For everyone else that came out tonight that wasn't a teacher, I appreciate hearing your concerns. I agree with Mr. LeBlanc, that I think the end of the masks is in sight. I think we have a few mitigation strategies and some questions that we have to find out from the state. But it doesn't sound like, it's going to be an easy option for the districts. So I think that's important to know. I think the end is in sight as far as that goes. With that being said, I'm going to end there because we have some other things we have to talk about. And for those of you that don't know, we have to take a vote to go past 10:30. So we're going to move on. Unfinished business. We have nothing. New business. Item A, approval of the EPS 2022-2023 school calendar. Any discussion? Do I need a motion?
Sorry, Tina.
We have people funneling out, so just hold on one second.
I can hear.
Do I have a motion for the approval of the EPS 2022-2023 school calendar?
So moved.
We're going to move and then discuss, right, Tina?
Yes.
So moved.
By Mr. Hamry. Second by Mr. LeBlanc. Any discussion? Ms. Pickett?
So I would like to propose a couple changes if we could vote with a couple of adaptations. One is I understand that there's some history to why we may have called the break in December Christmas break, because I believe there used to be a formal winter break in February. However, that's no longer the case. So I am proposing that we adjust the December break from school that now is named Christmas break to winter break. And I'm also asking that Good Friday, that date, just become part of our spring date, that we don't need to call out Good Friday as its own date, that this becomes wrapped into our spring break. And, you know, I have some other considerations. However, I do want to think about, you know, how we have conversations around making adjustments to our calendar in a more community-wide way. I also think it'd be nice if we could acknowledge various cultural celebrations in our community. There's some great resources for that. And possibly down the road, not a proposed change for tonight, but I know parent-teachers conferences, they're early in the year, especially since we only have one. So I would love, you know, down the road if we could have a discussion around either adding a spring conference or moving the conferences to December. But that's not a change for this calendar. So the two changes I'm asking for is the December break would be called winter break, and that Good Friday would just be lumped into what we're calling spring break.
Mr. Ryder?
To Mrs. Pickett's point, just a point of clarification, they're both called vacation. So you're proposing that it would be called winter vacation and spring vacation.
Sounds good to me.
Any other discussion?
I'd like to know, is it okay to ask why you want to make those changes, Ms. Pickett?
To demonstrate a more inclusive calendar. Not every student in our school district celebrates Christmas, and there's many other holidays that actually exist in that month and throughout the year. So I think it's a much more inclusive way for that, and that's the proposed changes and the reasons why.
Thank you.
Mr. Ryder?
No, just to Amanda's point, there's actually more than one holiday even in that week itself. We have New Year's, we have a lot of things going on. So it's not necessarily for one holiday, but calling it winter vacation versus Christmas vacation, I have no problem with that.
Kathy, do we have to make a new motion?
You need to amend the motion.
Okay. Alrighty.
Need a first and second to amend the motion.
I make a motion to amend the calendar as recommended by Ms. Pickett. Second.
Motion by Mr. Hamry, second by Mr. Ryder.
Show of hands right now for that?
Show of hands.
Oh, do you want to do a discussion first? Sorry.
Oh, is there a discussion?
I think she meant public discussion. Sorry.
So is it show of hands?
Yeah, show of hands, sorry. It's okay. 5 with 2 no.
Okay. So now, can I have a motion to approve the amended EPS 2022-2023 school calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Hamry, seconded by Mr. Ryder. Any discussion?
That's a roll call.
Roll call?
Is this for the second part, the April?
Winter break in the April, yes.
Now, does Good Friday always fall with the spring break? Because, you know, Easter doesn't always. No.
You may need to adjust that in other years because that is a contractual holiday through some bargaining unit. So you may have to address that going further. But
Right,
it
because
would
I
be
know
for
it
this
doesn't
calendar
always.
year only that my understanding is that the request is made.
Mm-hmm.
Roll call, Kathy?
Okay. Mr. Hamry?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Against.
Mrs. Pickett?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder?
4.
Mr. Ungary?
No.
Mrs. Acree?
Yes.
Dr. Calnan?
Yes.
Mrs. Cushman?
No.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, item B, BOE policy revision and adoptions, first reading. Mr. Longi or Mr. Ryder?
I'll start. So members of the policy committee approved to move forward 2 new policies and 2 current policies that needed revisions based on legislative changes at the state level. You have all been provided with the policies, both what they were and what they will be, what they have passed through the subcommittee as. So I make a motion to approve, make a motion to approve the first reading of these 4 policies at this time.
Do I have a second? Okay, motion by Mr. Ryder, seconded by Mr. Hamry. Any discussion? Ms. Cushman?
I specifically wanted to address the policy that's 6142, that's the social emotional learning assessment. Social emotional learning, of course, is something when it was first started, was something that we would support. But as I considered this policy and the assessments, I was considering that a good policy is good for all the students. Now, we would certainly applaud an assessment that would help our students to grow and their ability to identify and to manage their emotions. We would support an assessment that would help them to grow in social skills and to make reasonable and responsible decisions. But what about students that might be harmed by this assessment? One particular group of students that came to mind as I was thinking this is transgender students, and let me explain why. When we consider transgender dysphoria, in 2007 in our nation, we had 1 pediatric gender clinic. Gender dysphoria is very certainly real, but it's also exceedingly rare. In the 100-year history of its scientific study, it affected 0.01% of our population. It was diagnosed in preschool-age children and almost exclusively in boys. It was determined in the scientific study, and as the data was collected on it, that if the children were left alone without any medical intervention or any encouragement to socially transition as we see today, nearly 75% of those with this gender dysphoria just outgrew it. Prior to 2012, there was no scientific literature on gender dysphoria arising in teenage girls. But after only 1 decade, there's been an increase in teen girls by over 4,400%. This doesn't seem to be gender dysphoria, but rather a social contagion. So when we have an assessment like this that labels a child as gender confused, or whatever label it may they use, what would that lead to? Would it lead to an encouragement to transition? Would it lead to hormone therapy, puberty blockers? Given the statistics of knowing that over 75% naturally outgrow it, would this really be what's best for the students? So that is the concern that I have regarding this assessment in terms of how it affect all the students.
Mr. Hamry?
So in this particular policy, first, putting aside that this is a state mandated policy because we all know where the room reads on state mandates, social and emotional learning applies to every student that walks through the doors of the schools that we are responsible for. The suggestion that a demographic that you don't understand and providing that rather inaccurate history lesson on the gender dysphoria, seems to do a serious disservice to our population that is definitely there and younger than the studies that you're talking about. So I'm going to respectfully ask that we, I'm going to end my discussion there for the time being. I appreciate the conversation.
Could I just point out one thing? This policy is actually not state mandated. There are things legislatively that require our district to comply with, and we're already covered legally by having our 9th graders teamed up with youth services currently for this assessment.
So if I might ask, sorry to interrupt you, but Mr. Longy, can you verify that this is state mandated or not?
So this is a policy that is not required by the board to adopt, but obviously we still follow state legislation.
No, I appreciate that clarification. I do apologize. Thank you.
It's okay, no problem.
But based just on our conversation today, we do fulfill what the state requires. And what we're
Right, so
currently
we
doing
do
with
have,
ninth graders.
some students that are being screened for social emotional services, correct?
Okay.
Oh, Ms. Pickett? You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry, it's hard not being physically there with you. I just want to clarify that the social emotional learning assessment that is outlined in legislation and that Enfield Public Schools is participating in is a strength-based assessment. So it is not based on deficits at all. It is a screening. I believe it's 7 questions that are all based on student strengths. So this would not be labeling students. It is not diagnostic. And that is really important to share because it's a universal screener, not a diagnostic tool. It has nothing to do with those things. It's a strength-based assessment.
Okay, Kathy, roll call. Oh, sorry, Mr. Ryder had his hand up, sorry.
No, just one more point of clarification to Mr. Longy's point that even if this specific policy isn't mandated to be on our books, it is still state mandated and therefore legal. And again, anything that we put in our books that clarifies what laws mean, because laws are very lengthy, and to something the superintendent said earlier today, like, any law could be 30, 40, 50 pages long, and it means you could summarize it in a 2 or 3 page document, which is what we do. This is what we give administrators to guide them in what we're asking of them. There's sections of what we're asking behaviorally and academically from our students. There's chapters that talk about what we do with our vendors and our business, and anything that we can do to clarify things, we should do.
So I just want to better understand because, and maybe Andy can help a little bit, because I'm hearing here that it's not required, and then I thought I just heard from Scott, that it is required.
There are.
I just want to understand: is this policy required or is it not required?
I think might be saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So the policy, a district does not have to adopt this policy, but that doesn't excuse the fact that it's still state legislation, if that makes sense. So we have a lot of legislation that's on the book that for whatever reason, the legislation will tell school districts, you don't have to have a policy on this. There's other policies, though, where the state says clearly you have to have a policy on this. It doesn't, just because you do not have a policy on this, doesn't mean I can tell the administrators they don't have a policy on it, ignore state law. We still have to fulfill state law. This policy, as Scott, I think, I don't want to speak.
So I just excuse me, just stop right there. You say we still have to fulfill state law. So I guess the question is, are we fulfilling state law now without this policy?
I would say we're hitting the tip of the iceberg with the work we're doing, but we've just started. Standards aren't even out yet for younger grades just yet. So standards are going to be released. So we can't do an assessment yet till standards are completed. Standards for grades 4 through 12 still have to come out.
So when those standards do come out, will they be required by the law?
The way your policy is written, if you look at the very first paragraph, when you read that, it says the board may administer social emotional learning assessment, and that's where the law has it right now.
No, I'm sorry. This is a proposed policy, correct?
Proposed policy, correct.
Okay, it's not the way our policy is written. It's not our policy, correct?
Right, this is a proposed policy.
It's a proposed policy, you know,
Yes.
but we haven't adopted it yet, so it's not our policy. Am I understanding that correctly?
He meant that
That's
it
what
was
you're
in our
doing here
packet.
right now. You're
Right,
looking
so this
to-
okay, I just want to be sure. Because sometimes what we have is a policy in place, and then there's a modification or an upgrade to a policy that we have in place.
I understand what you're saying. So, correct. This is not a current policy we have. This is not a current policy.
Right, that's where I was asking the
Gotcha.
clarification.
That's it. Yep.
Kathy, roll call?
Mr. Hamre?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickett?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
Mr. Ungary?
No.
Mrs. Acree?
No.
Dr. Calnan?
Yes.
Mrs. Cushman?
No.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item C, action, if any, regarding the extension of the mask mandate in schools, which,
I'm going to motion to table that since we don't
Right,
have the
okay.
guidelines and
I
it is on
get it.
here, so.
Okay. So for item C, because we don't have all the information from the state yet regarding the masks and any really solid
I
information.
agree. It might be helpful for just to read really quickly a message that I received from the commissioner, and I'll just quickly add one part. Please be advised that it's a notification of the governor's press release and his press conference. Please be advised that until this legislative process is complete, school districts and schools must continue to comply with the current masking requirements, which remain in effect through February 15, 2022. Should the legislature vote to extend mandatory school masking through February 28, 2022, or some later date, school districts and schools will be required to continue to comply with this legislation. So there was a lot of confusion this evening about just do it tonight. This comes from the Commissioner of Ed saying you can't.
Thank you for that clarification on that, because I know there's been a lot of talk just from 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon. So because we don't have enough information, I had a motion from Mr. Ryder and a second from Ms. Pickett to table it. Is there any discussion? Roll call?
Yes. Mr. Hamre?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickett?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
Mr. Ungary?
Yes.
Mrs. Acree?
Yes.
Dr. Calnan?
Yes.
Mrs. Cushman?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion to table passes.
Sorry. The next item, board committee reports. Curriculum committee.
All right. We will be meeting on the 17th and discussing some program of study updates, the need for some bilingual programming like we heard in the budget update, along with some information regarding the elementary reading curriculum, the workshop model, and some related resources. In March, we will be discussing the Talented and Gifted program.
Thank you. Finance committee.
We had a very informative meeting yesterday at the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. Diane Edwards, the director of the Nutrition Division, reviewed the December financial statements with us, kind of went through the statements, and along with some of the challenges she presented as a result of supply chain shortages and a number of other issues. Also discussed were the Head Start grants and the status of the Simkovitz endowment for the Talented and Gifted program. With respect to the latter, the value of the endowment has increased by more than $222,000 from the beginning of 2021 to the end. So we're in pretty good shape. Thank you.
Policy committee, Mr. Ryder.
We meet next week on the 15th.
Leadership committee. We're trying to schedule leadership committee meetings on the first Tuesday, the first board meeting of the month. So we'll hope to have something scheduled for March. So we'll talk about that. Joint facilities. We're meeting Thursday. Joint facilities, we'll have to check when we're meeting with that. I don't, yeah. JFK Building Committee.
JFK Building Committee met last week on Thursday. And again, I just want to thank everybody for the progress that they're doing. I want to thank the team of teachers and parents and other folks in town who volunteered to be a part of that building committee and have continuously been moving it along. Thank you again to Mr. Daigle. And they have still a targeted date to be done with everything prior to the beginning of the school year this fall, with the few exceptions of maybe a short punch list or some painting. But they're on time. So looking forward to opening the 2022-2023 school year in the future at JFK, construction free.
Exciting time. Joint Insurance Committee, I believe we're meeting in March. I'll double check that date. Jean. Joint Insurance Committee, or I'm sorry, Joint Security Committee.
Our next scheduled meeting is March 2nd.
Okay.
Sorry, just want to make sure you didn't miss it.
Yep. And then the Youth Mental Health and Wellness Advisory Committee, we already spoke about that, so we'll be hopefully putting some things in motion on that. So I appreciate you guys. Keep your tenacity to keep it going and finding information out for both of you, so thank you. Okay, item 13, approval of minutes. A motion. Can I have a motion to approve the special virtual Board of Ed meeting minutes from January 27, 2022?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hamry, seconded by Mr. Ryder. Show of hands.
What is this to approving it?
Yeah,
I'm abstaining.
Yep. Approval of the accounts and payroll.
Okay, for the certification of expenditures for fiscal year 2021-2022.
Oh, you don't.
The Finance Committee met on February 7th, 2022 to review financial statements for the month of January year-to-date and to examine various documents related to finances. Our review concluded that there is nothing significant to report to the board. So the motion is, I move we accept the superintendent's certification as follows. I hereby certify that in the month of January, total expenditures amount to $6,925,166.67, broken down between payroll totaling $4,376,586.13 and other accounts totaling $2,548,580.54. All payments have been made in accordance with the approved budget and are properly accounted for within the books of accounts. Copies of approval for check invoices are properly documented.
If that, yeah.
Second.
Seconded, motion made by Dr. Calnan, seconded by Mr. Hamry. Show of hands.
And certification of grants and Head Start expenditures for fiscal year 2021-2022. The Finance Committee met on February 7th, 2022 to review financial statements for grants during the month of January year-to-date and to examine various documents related to finances. Our review concluded that there is nothing significant to report to the board. So the motion is, I move we accept the superintendent's certification as follows. I hereby certify that in the month of January, the total grant and Head Start expenditures amount to $846,546.03, broken down between payroll totaling $444,963.11 and other accounts totaling $401,582.92. All payments have been made in accordance with the approved budget and are properly accounted for within the books of accounts. Copies of approval for check invoices are properly documented.
Motion by Dr. Calnan, seconded by Mr. Ungary. Show of hands. Correspondence and communications. Is there a need for executive session?
There is not.
Oh, I have one thing. one thing,
Oh,
Madam Chair.
Scott would like to correspond and communicate.
I just had one thing. This Thursday night at Enfield High for incoming freshmen, which is all our 8th graders over at JFK, I just wanted to mention the program of studies night that I will be attending as a father, as I have an 8th grader who will be a freshman somehow next fall. So I just wanted to wish all of our 8th graders good luck, and I wanted to thank our 8th graders for living through the 3 years of construction at JFK, and for so many of you succeeding, excelling, honor rolling, and high honor rolling. And to all the kids that are heading off to the high school in the fall, I wish you luck, and I'll see you Thursday.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Hamry, seconded by Mr. Ryder. All in favor?
Yep.
You want to?
Oh, I did. I did, yeah. I was like, I could barely keep.